Hello, everybody. Good day, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Ask Abhijit show. Hope everybody is doing great. Uh, as I'm sure you know, today is a super chat episode and live chat episode. We'll take as many questions from the super chat as possible, and also from the live chat as and when possible. And today is a geopolitics only episode, so let's take questions about geopolitics. Let me see who all is there on the live chat, and let us see who all is there. I can see Strenuous something. Uh, Alan J. Victor, Samat Tripathi, Nabanita Das, Sergeant Skyland, Somi Jain, Animals for Laugh, good evening, Ayush Singh, Namaste, Rohan Suneja, Vikash, PJ, Shashi Kiran, Abi Silva, Sachin Shaw, Dheeraj Kamath, good morning, Amaya Tulpule from Germany, hello, Bharat First, Daksh Vora from Gujarat, hello, Samarth Tripathi, hello, Amisha, hi, Amisha Mishra, hello. Dhruv Duria, Crazy Brain, hello. Good to see you again. Rakesh Mistry, Shashi Kiran, Bhaskar Kayatwal, Jaideep Parmar, Ayush again. Mahek Katta from Ethiopia, hello. Daksh Vora is from Rajkot, Gujarat. Sumit, Bharat First. Spurti Utturi, Namaste. Bharat again. Negro. Geopolitical Dubey from Indore. Hello. Good evening. Pranay Paul from Kolkata. Raja Akash Kumar. Good evening. Vladimir Putin. Ayushman Singh. Varun Bajaj from Twitter or X. Raghav Raj Banga. Master Didi. Yatin Dahiya. General Subothai. Napoleon Singh Shekhawat from is going to Russia. Suhas Reddy. Hensi Penguin. Pratik Magdum. Pratik Thagare Nihao from China, McLevin from Hawaii, Komal, Prabhakar Pandey, Nav Bagalkot, Arjun from Oceania, Stone from Mumbai, and so many other people. So, good evening, good day to all of you. Thank you so much for being on the live chat. And let us take some questions. What questions do we have? I can see Ganesh from Germany as well, Aditya Raj Rathod, Radhe Radhe, and everybody else. Sasha Shalavik from Shalom from Tel Aviv. Well, Shalom back to you, sir. And everybody else. Okay, so let's take some questions. All right. So this is the first question we will take. Rohan Suneja asks, what's my views on the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace deal by DT, by Donald Trump? Azerbaijan-Armenia. Yes, so Donald Trump has negotiated, has brokered a peace deal between the two nations, Azerbaijan and Armenia, who have been at loggerheads for a very long time. Historically, the region, okay, let's go to the maps and let's put the map on the screen. This is the region we are talking about. Let's get that on the screen. So we are talking about the Kavkaz region, the Caucasus region. And here we have the nations, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, and Russia. So the two nations have been at loggerheads for a very long time. Both were part of the USSR. And after the USSR broke up, there was a war over Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh, that region. And at least two wars. There was one in 1991. There was one in 2020. And that's been, simmering and still going on kind of for some time, for the past 4-5 years, on and off. And in the last war, the 2020 war, Azerbaijan gained significant amounts of territory from Armenia. Essentially, the objective is to wipe Armenia off the map of the world, to erase Armenia from the map of the world, and to create a pan-Turan, pan-Turkic corridor between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and the Turkic nations like Turkmenistan, etc. A long story. I will not tell you about the entire history, but that's the deal. So Azerbaijan is in the ascendancy. And Donald Trump has brokered a peace deal between the two nations. So there's going to be an end to hostilities between the two nations. Both countries have committed to cease all fighting, respect each other's sovereignty, open diplomatic and trade relations, etc. And the interesting thing is that this agreement, it grants the United States exclusive development rights for a 27-mile corridor, which is going to be called the Trump route. The Trump route for international peace and prosperity. And this will be a route across southern Armenia, and it's going to connect Azerbaijan with this exclave that they have, Nakhchivan, which borders Turkey. And the US will have exclusive development rights to this place. There's going to be rail, there's going to be oil and gas pipelines, electricity, data lines, whatnot. So there's a commercial angle to this, and Mr. Trump is going to, the US is going to benefit from that. So that essentially is the long and the short of the thing. And both nations have signed this peace agreement. Mr. Trump has brokered it. He's the peacemaker. He wants a Nobel Peace Prize, come what may, right? So the question is, how long will this last? Well, I suppose it will last. If Mr. Trump is personally interested in this, he's going to ensure that this is enforced, and we'll see. See, Mr. Trump is going to be around as the president of the US for the next 3.5 years. After that, we'll see how it goes. But I expect that it's going to last at least as long as Mr. Trump is in power, as long as he is a reasonably strong president, which remains to be seen. So that's my views so far. It's a very new event, and yeah, that's what's happened thus far. Godliness says, rank top 5 world leaders based on their IQ and foreign policy style from 1950 till now. Also, as an Indian, I want to nominate Mr. Chadha for Padma Awards. Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. Rank the top 5 world leaders on their IQ. Well, I don't know what the IQs of the various leaders were, but we can rank leaders based on how successful they were. And how do you measure how successful a leader is? Well, that's a good question actually. What's the parameter that you rank leaders on? Well, the only parameter that counts is whether a leader succeeds or not in ensuring their nation's peace, prosperity, and success overall. Right, the achievement of your national objectives, of your foreign policy objectives, economic objectives, and overall an increase in your national prosperity, security, all of that. So from 1950 until now, who were the great world leaders? Let us see. I think Joseph Stalin was one of the great leaders. He did very nasty things, no question about it, right? Terribly nasty things he did. But overall, you have to give Mr. Stalin credit for transforming the USSR from a broken country into a superpower. So number one is Joseph Stalin. You see, when you talk about these things, geopolitical rankings and all, this is pretty amoral. You don't inject morality into this. You don't bring morality into the discourse. So you have someone like Mao Zedong, you have someone like Joseph Stalin. They did terrible, terrible things that caused the deaths of millions. But still, if you look at the overall trajectory that a nation took as a consequence of their rule, it was overall beneficial, you could say, from a numerical perspective. The hard power score of the USSR increased substantially. So one would be Mr. Stalin. The second, I suppose you would have to give it. Okay, we're talking about dictators here. I suppose what would be Mao Zedong? He did terrible things. I mean, the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, the War on Sparrows. In case you haven't heard about that, look it up. The War on Sparrows, which caused a frightful famine in China. And yet, Mao Zedong was responsible for China gaining this gigantic piece of land called Tibet. Right? They still occupy Tibet. Mao Zedong ensured that China got an upper hand over India decisively, 1962, and so much more. Mao Zedong. So I would have to give it to Mao Zedong. So that's another one. That's two. Who else? US presidents. Lyndon Johnson. Well, he brought the deep state back, you could say, Lyndon Johnson. But I would say it would be Ronald Reagan, the last great American president. He's the one who presided over essentially the dissolution of the USSR. So I would say Ronald Reagan. Who else do we have? One would be, I would say, Lee Kuan Yew, a benevolent dictator, a strong man. He did not brook any dissent or whatsoever, but he transformed this little city-state called Singapore from a third world backwater, to a first world nation in just one generation, 25 years. Amazing, incredible thing. There's one slot left. Now, who do we bring in? Should we bring in, I don't know. There's no one from Africa that I can think of. I mean, they were good people, but they were all, bumped off by the powers that be. Who else? Is it Monsieur Charles de Gaulle? Was he that impactful, Monsieur Charles de Gaulle? I would say Margaret Thatcher, probably. Margaret Thatcher. the Iron Lady of the UK. There's plenty of people who dislike her, but overall, as long as she was in power, the UK was still a world power. It was not a lapdog of the US. The moment she went out of power, within 5 years, the UK became a lapdog of the US. Utterly. The moment Tony Blair comes to power, right? So I would say Margaret Thatcher. I'm sure there's more leaders, but here we have it. 5 leaders, since you asked for. I will not rank them, uh, which is the first, which is the second, but these are the 5 I can think of off the top of my head. All right. Sergeant Skylan says, why has Trump been antagonistic towards us, India, since Operation Sindoor? By the way, proud that our India is standing up for itself. No question about it. It's something to be really proud of. Most would have expected that India would cave in, that India would bend the knee and become a de facto vassal of the US. If you have watched my geostrategy episodes, you will see that I had given 4 scenarios on the 1st of July. The kind of trajectory the US-India relationship could possibly take. 4 scenarios. One was India standing up for itself. Second was India becoming a vassal. Uh, Third was India not doing really well, not being here, there. It just things not going well for India. And the fourth one was a tilt towards China. So it's the first one was India gets a good deal with the US. Yeah, there was option A, scenario A. Scenario B was India becomes a vassal. Scenario C was India stands up for itself, and scenario D was a tilt towards China. So we are witnessing something like scenario C and a little bit of sprinkling of scenario D. So India standing up for itself. Incredible. I think it's shocked a lot of people around the world. I think Trump himself is rather stunned as to how things have gone. The turn the relationship has taken. So why has Trump been antagonistic towards us? Well, the US, I will say this again, regards India as a problem. They do not want the emergence of a new China down the line, 20 years down the line, by 2035, 2040 horizon. And India is showing every sign of doing that, despite all the immense internal problems India faces, problems of our own making. Despite all the internal problems, India is still the fastest growing major economy in the world. In India is projected to keep on growing. There's no chance of recession, no matter what happens. So by 2035, 2040, India is going to be a whole different beast, a different league altogether. And the US doesn't want that. The US believes that they can deal with China, but they want to contain India. They want to keep India down. They want to hamper whatever chances India has of growing. So that is one. And Trump is the guy who's changing the entire world order. So obviously he's going to focus on India. And secondly, so something happened during Operation Sindhur, clearly. Some things have been revealed yesterday. Like we knocked out 5 Pakistani fighter planes. We destroyed multiple F-16s on the ground. We clearly have hit nuclear warhead storage sites where you would have US nuclear warheads being stored there, not Pakistani ones. We hit their Noor Khan Air Base, which was operated by the US. It has come out, that revelation has come out. And maybe some other things also happened. And it looks like there was a phone call between Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump probably must have made some threats, and Mr. Modi would have. It looks like Mr. Modi did not stand down. He stood up for India. And I think that's where the relationship changed. Right? So Trump is really upset. Mr. Trump wants India to bend the knee and become a proper American vassal. And that's not happening. So that's why he is being antagonistic towards us. And that's going to continue. So the India-US relationship is going downhill. And that's not going to change anytime soon. Dheeraj Kamath says, aren't Trump's policies endangering the US's imperial interests? Trump is basically compelling countries to collectively unite to reduce their dependence on the US. The EU is now pursuing military sovereignty. You are right. I mean, if you have seen my past geostrategy episodes, you will see that the EU is doubling its military spending, and it's taking many steps that can be regarded as steps that will boost its strategic autonomy vis-a-vis the US, which would make it less of a vassal of the US overall. EU, NATO, all of that, things are changing. So the question is, what on earth is Trump doing? Isn't what he is doing, isn't that endangering the US's imperial interests overall? What are the US's imperial interests? To hold as many nations as vassals as possible, and to have complete 360-degree power projection capabilities across the globe. These are the US interests, right? Now, by dismantling the global trade order, the global financial, monetary, economic order, and going back to the good old days of the imperial system when you dealt with countries one by one, rather than having a broad treaty, broad superstructure, the rules-based world order which applied to everybody, and you let things roll. Uh, he has totally shaken up the world order, and a lot of countries obviously aren't happy with this. I mean, you had an existing relationship that was going just fine. The entire world was running smoothly, but now you've dismantled everything and you're imposing tariffs one by one on countries depending on how they deal with you, and whether they show sufficient deference or not. What does this indicate? What does it indicate? It indicates that the US is no longer confident about itself. It created this world order that existed until earlier this year, the first quarter of the year, and now it's dismantling it. Right? It's Mr. Trump is the guy who's in charge of dismantling this. So the US created the order that was running smoothly all this while, but now they want to dismantle it. Why is it? It's because they feel that they are no longer that powerful overall. There are major powers that are rising now, and these powers pose significant challenges to the US, the kind of challenges the US hasn't seen in essentially forever, right? Essentially since 1990, 91, when the USSR disintegrated. The USSR was kind of an equal to the US. It was a peer competitor. And now you have the since 2012 or so, you have the emergence of China. And you have now the emergence of India as well. India is also a nation that could, in 20 years, become another China kind of entity, different but similar. Uh, and overall, the US, its economy, I mean, if you look at the economy of the G7 nations and compare that with the BRICS nations, you can see BRICS is now taking over. So there's so much happening that is making the US way less confident. China is rising technologically. China has become an almost peer competitor of the US in so many technologies. And so much more. So the US isn't confident now. It's worried, and that's why they want to gain more control over the world order by dismantling what exists, and approaching every relationship as a bilateral relationship, and deciding based on negotiations how much tariffs to impose on which nation. And the nations that don't kowtow will be hit with major tariffs, massive tariffs, like India, like Brazil, and so on. So it looks like Trump believes that this is going to work for him, right? And Trump is somebody who has been speaking about tariffs for 20, 30 years. I mean, I've seen interviews of Trump when he was nowhere near being a politician. He had not even considered being a politician. But he was asked about the way the US deals with various nations. And he said that we should impose tariffs. He used to talk about tariffs like 20, 30 years ago. So this has always been one of his pet projects, and now he's implementing that. So he personally seems to believe that I am preternaturally intelligent person, and I understand the way the world works. I understand everything, and I'm going to get things done. I'm going to, bring the US back on top again. I'm going to make America great again. But is it going to work? Well, you're already seeing a backlash towards that. Everyone's unhappy with this. The US, nations are cooperating with the US because they are afraid of the US, because the US is the number one it's a superpower. But nobody likes this. No one likes this. And when it comes to nations like India, China, Russia, Brazil, etc., they're gonna clearly band together. It's gonna happen in some shape, form, or way. It's going to happen. So that's one thing that is going to be the consequence of what Trump is doing. A lot of nations are going to coalesce in a different in a grouping that is essentially not aligned with the US, which essentially means opposed to the US. And when major economies like China, India, Russia, Brazil, they all come together, and other nations are also drawn towards that becomes a problem. That's the first problem one can think of. And this is going to have long-term consequences. Later, they can't say, okay, let's go back to the old world order because it's not working out. That won't work again later. And secondly, the tariffs are going to bite Trump in his backside very badly, because it's not us who's paying the tariffs. It's the American companies and American public that's paying the tariffs. That's what the people of America are now beginning to suddenly realize, right? So if I am an American importer, I'm an American corporation and I'm importing goods from India. Let's say I'm importing $1 million worth of, let's say, coconuts. Okay. Let's say I'm importing $1 million worth of coconuts from India. But Trump has imposed 50% tariffs on Indian goods. So when I receive the shipment worth $1 million from India, the moment I receive the shipment, I'm going to have to pay. That shipment is worth $1 million, right? So I'm going to have to pay 50% tariffs on that. I'm the importer. I'm the American company. I'm going to have to pay $500,000 to the US government on receipt of the goods, either to customs or whoever, whichever entity it is, in whichever shape or form. So I, the importer, the American company, am paying the tariff to the US government. And then, since I have paid 50% tariffs, I'm going to have to sell this goods to my consumers, to the US population at 50% at a 50% hiked rate. Otherwise, I'm going to be at a big loss. So who's going to essentially pay the price? I, the American company, am paying the price, and the American consumer is paying the price. It's going to cause a rise in prices. It eventually can boost manufacturing or whatever locally in the US, but it is going to create havoc in the US. Trump's approval ratings are going to plummet. And the midterms, which happen probably next year, it's going to be severe for the Republicans. That's what I foresee right now. So Trump is going to, it's not going to be all smooth for Trump. He's going to be very soon in rocky waters. So yeah, overall, you can see that this is going to weaken the US. So I agree with you, Dheeraj. It's going to weaken the US. It's going to weaken the US geopolitically. It's going to weaken the US internationally, diplomatically. And it's going to weaken Trump's position internally, domestically, politically. All of that. And well, someone of Trump's intelligence not seeing this, I don't know. Barbaric says, podcast with Dr. Shah, your views. Yeah, I am not aware of his analysis, so don't know. Sorry. Vishal says, once you said something like China can try to take Taiwan in 2027 or before 2027, why so? Look, I said that there seems to be some kind of deadline that Xi Jinping has given to his armed forces, which is the PLA and whatever else, People's Liberation Army. It looks like he has given a deadline of 2027. That you need to be ready and fully prepared by 2027 to take Taiwan when I give the orders. So, and we know that the situation has changed significantly across the Taiwan Strait. The PLA, the patterns of its exercises, etc., they've increased significantly. The overflights over Taiwan, the intrusions into Taiwanese waters, the encircling of the island, all of that has increased in frequency and magnitude and whatnot in the past, let's say, 3-4 years, right? In 2020, 2021, the situation was very different. So you can see a significant increase in the intensity and magnitude and frequency of these military actions that the Chinese armed forces are undertaking around Taiwan. So they clearly have taken some kind of deadline seriously, and they are preparing. They're doing military exercises and mock drills and whatnot for an invasion. So yeah, it looks like there's a deadline of 2027, and that's why I said that. But we'll see how it goes. Napoleon Singh Shekhawat says, why can't India use its NRIs, big ones? India favor Kash Patel. See, Kash Patel is not a non-resident Indian. He is a US citizen. A non-resident Indian is a person who lives outside of India but is still an Indian citizen, holds an Indian passport. Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, is a US citizen. So, well, if he is a US citizen, he's going to work for the interests of the United States, naturally. And we have lots of Indian origin people in significant positions in the US, no question about it. If you look at the Fortune 500 companies, if you look at the big tech companies, Microsoft, Google, Microsoft, you have Mr. Satya Nadella. Google, you have Mr. Sundar Pichai, and so many more. But these are all US citizens. None of them are Indian citizens, as far as I know. And if you're a US citizen, you're going to work for your country. You're not going to work for India. And of course, we have a huge diaspora in the US and other countries, and I'm sure that they can be, well, they will still have feelings for India. So you can certainly perhaps tap into that in some shape or form, but you don't do that overtly. You never do that overtly. The Chinese have a full-fledged program of doing that, and the Americans are really, really worried about Chinese origin citizens in the US. Anyhow, that's how it is. Zishan says, if Putin gets to keep the 5 oblasts, would that justify everything Russia has lost in the war, or will the Russian public demand more? Right. So, what's the situation right now? How many oblasts does Ukrainian oblasts does Russia control right now? Is it 5? We know that it's Luhansk, Donetsk, those regions. So let's go to the map quickly. Let's go to the map. So Russia controls about between 1/5 to 1/4 of the nation of Ukraine. Definitely the Luhansk, Donetsk region. Mariupol, is it? Definitely, I'm not sure. This, not Odessa, but yeah, overall, a significant portion of Ukraine is controlled. And look, Mr. Putin is now going to meet with Mr. Trump in Alaska, right? That's been announced. So Mr. Putin will meet with Mr. Trump for a summit, a first round of negotiations. Let's say about potentially ending the Ukraine war. So Trump is desperate. Mr. Trump is desperate to end the Ukraine war. He had promised that he would end it on day 1 of his presidency. It's been a big failure from that perspective. So Mr. Trump is desperate. And Mr. Putin knows that Mr. Trump is desperate. Now, you want to negotiate from a position of strength. And Mr. Putin has a huge amount of leverage because he controls so much of territory that his armed forces have taken over at his command. And I expect that Mr. Putin, knowing Mr. Trump's negotiation style, Mr. Putin will come out with initially maximalist demands. I would say it would involve the complete demilitarization of Ukraine, the complete denazification of Ukraine, a regime change in Kiev, and more territory for Russia beyond what it currently controls. Maybe territory all the way to the Dnieper River. I don't know. I expect Mr. Putin to make maximalist demands straight off the bat, right? And then let's see how Mr. Trump responds. So Putin, I assure you, whatever territory his armed forces currently control, not an inch is going to be given away. He's going to demand more because he justifiably can say, I can unleash hell tomorrow. Okay, I can flatten Ukraine on demand if required. His armed forces have the capability to flatten Ukraine. They've been extremely restrained. They've purposefully chosen a slow war strategy, a frozen conflict strategy, because eventually the major victories come on the negotiating table. So you've got to prepare the groundwork for that, and that's what's going to happen now. So Putin will definitely keep whatever territory the Russians have already taken, and he's going to demand more. And at the end of the day, whenever a negotiated settlement happens, it's going to be more territory that Russia will gain. That's how I see things going. Mr. Zelensky obviously is going to say he doesn't accept this. And that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem not for Mr. Putin, but for Mr. Trump. Okay? Now, will the Russian public be satisfied with 5 oblasts? I think they will be satisfied even if Russia gets 5 oblasts, because Russia has already. But I'm pretty sure the Russian public will be expecting a regime change in Ukraine. Zelensky can't continue. So these are the hard demands Mr. Putin will make on Mr. Trump, and the onus is going to be on Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump is going to be the defensive. Is going to be on the defensive. He is not in a position to go on the offensive. And to sweeten the deal, Putin may give some kind of carrot to Mr. Trump. You get to exploit some resources of Ukraine or whatever. Obviously that sort of thing is very enticing for Mr. Trump, as we know very well. So that's how I see things going. I see Putin keeping all the territory he has acquired. I see Putin asking for way more territory and asking for way more than simply territory. demilitarization, denazification, regime change, and much more. And I think that's how it's going to go. And I don't think the first summit will see an end of the war. Maybe they will need more meetings. They'll need more meetings. The first meeting, I don't think any viable result will come from that, because it's not up to these two gentlemen. There's another factor, which is Mr. Zelensky, and the fact that the EU supports Mr. Zelensky. And Mr. Trump doesn't control the EU that much. So that's going to be a problem. So Mr. Trump is going to be on the defensive, and it's going to be a big headache for him as to what to do about Mr. Zelensky. Yeah, well, we'll see about that. Yeah? All right. Mayank says, after AIF F-35 PM statements, what more can India do? What's AIF? F-35, I understand. What's AIF? PM statement. I'm a little confused as to what AIF means. AIF. F-35, we know. We are not buying the F-35, for sure. That's off the table now, because the US can't be trusted. When they support Pakistan, how can we trust them, right? So the F-35 is obviously off the table. We're not purchasing that. We'll most likely go with, it looks like, possibly the Su-57. Yeah, as long as there's proper significant transfer of technology and so on. I'm not sure what AIF means. I'm sorry about that. All right, sorry. Okay, Prashant says, per Kissinger, being America's friend is dangerous. Being an enemy is fatal. Not so. Not quite the case. He didn't say being an enemy is fatal. What did he say? Being America's friend is dangerous. Being an ally is fatal. What exactly did Kissinger say? Let's Google it. I'm old-fashioned. I don't do ChatGPT. I do Google. Kissinger. Okay, let's see Kissinger's statement. Being America's friend, this is the one. It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal. Understand? It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal. That's what Mr. Kissinger said. Okay? So, you see, being a friend is fatal. Being an enemy is dangerous, no question. But being a friend is fatal. So, can you think of America's friends today? NATO nations, EU nations, South Korea, Japan, essentially vassals and countries under American occupation. And Canada can be considered to be an American friend, and so on. Enemy, we aren't an enemy of the US. You could say China and Russia are America's enemies. India is, from Trump's perspective, a prospective vassal, a nation that he would like to add to the ranks of his vassals. That's the thing. That's what he wants. He wants to make India America's friend. And we are refusing to be a friend, and we are also refusing to be an enemy. We are on the middle ground. We are saying we are not your enemy. We have no interest in being an enemy of the US. We want to cooperate with you wherever possible, wherever it is mutually beneficial. We want to cooperate with you. And we have been doing that thus far. Right? So we do not have any interest in being your enemy. We will do nothing that will harm your interests, but we will safeguard our interests. And if you insist that we take actions that harm our interests, we will refuse point blank to your face. That's India's stand. We are not bending the knee. We are not caving in. We are not agreeing to become an American vassal. Over here, friend means vassal. Understand that. So we don't want to be in that position. That's fatal. That's fatal. But we won't be your enemy. Nope. We won't do a thing that will hurt you, but we will safeguard our interests. That's where we are. That's the middle ground. Understand? We are keeping our interests safe. We are prioritizing our interests. We are working towards our interests. And we are staying cautious. We are doing nothing that can genuinely be regarded as something that is adversarial to the US or detrimental to US interests. So I think that's the right strategy for India. That's exactly what we're doing. Very good foreign policy. I don't care what so and so people are saying about India's foreign policy. I have no interest in who whatever so and so person is saying. This is my perspective. I have some understanding of how things work. So yeah, Bradley says, could Trump use the Kashmir issue to sanction India? How so? How so? What is it that merits sanctioning? What are we doing in Kashmir? What exactly? There's no justification. See, when you want to sanction a nation, you need some kind of justification. It's some kind of pretext. Well, what is it that we are doing in Kashmir that would justify any form of sanctions? There's nothing they can find. That's the problem they're facing, right? So yeah, they can't really. Of course, if they want to do it, then they can make any kind of pretext, any kind of justification. But we are not there yet in that relationship where they will start sanctioning us. See, in the past, the US sanctioned India when we tested nuclear weapons. We are a sovereign nation. We have the right to do whatever we wish that is in line with our perception of our national security, national interests. And that's what we did. Prime Minister Vajpayee ordered the testing of nuclear weapons, and we tested them. And as a consequence, the Americans imposed sanctions on India that you cannot do such things. You cannot dare become a nuclear power. Well, we are one now. Deal with it. So they imposed sanctions on India. And at that time, the USSR had just disintegrated. So the Americans arm twisted Russia into not selling, not transferring cryogenic rocket engine technology to India. So India had to work another decade to develop the technology in-house. But we did that. So if they really want to sanction India, they'll find any pretext. But I don't see Kashmir being that pretext. A bored soul still says, will Trump make statements over Kashmir now? It's possible. He may. Trump may try to needle India in a multiplicity of ways, and one of those could be possibly making statements over Kashmir. I mean, he's definitely cozying up with Pakistan. He is getting Pakistan in bed with him, right? Asim Munir, the military, whatever he is, dictator of Pakistan, I think he's currently on a second visit to the US in like 2-3 months. So he's being given the red carpet treatment by the Trump regime. And if they're in bed with Pakistan, they may make statements over Kashmir. Well, we'll see about that. Yes. Nikhil Srivastav says, if the US and India start opposing each other, how will India carry out its ambitions in AI, GPUs, LLM, etc.? Will we miss the bus? Yep, it's a good question. So, look, India isn't opposing the US, but India is opposing US attempts to vassalize India. And that is a huge affront to Mr. Trump. How dare you? How dare you? You need to bend the knee. You need to be super deferential to me, and that sort of thing. So the US is opposing India. We aren't opposing the US. Okay? So let's say the US opposes India, and Trump is super, super upset with India, super pissed off with India, let's say. And let's say he imposes restrictions on exports of semiconductor products to India, the kind of restrictions he has imposed on China, for example. Let's say he does that. What does India do then? That would place India put India in a spot. Definitely, it will be bad for India. What do we do then? So then we will have to wait until our own semiconductor mission becomes a little more mature and starts producing chips that are more powerful. Right now, we are producing a certain class of chips. It's just begun. But not bad. Not bad. We have at least taken the initial steps in the right direction. So maybe we may have to either wait for a decade until we start producing chips of that caliber, or maybe we'll have to import something from China if China is willing to do that. Will China be willing to do that? We'll have to see. So you see, this is what happens when you are technologically not sovereign enough, when you depend on other nations for critical technologies. So nations like the US will definitely seek to leverage that. So will we miss the bus? I don't think we'll entirely miss the bus. See, what the government can do is whatever GPUs, etc., do exist in the country, they can be stockpiled and given only to research efforts that are critical in nature, that sort of thing. So, rationing and stuff. And we may still be able to produce good enough AIs and so on. We are working towards that direction right now, but it will certainly hamper our plans. So this is what happens when you're technologically not sovereign. So we are now beginning to take the steps in the right direction towards becoming fully sovereign in the field of semiconductors and quantum computing and all of that. So yeah, it's going to be a tough road ahead. Like I said, India is going to have to swallow 20 years of pain, and this could be one of those things. We will see. The government of India will have to come up with creative solutions, I suppose, if this sort of thing happens, if the US imposes restrictions on India. Amisha says, no questions, just when I want you to know you're the best. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. Thank you. Govind says, can India stop all trade with the US? Is it practically possible? Look, anything is practically possible, but is it something we want to do? You see, the US is the world's largest market, the largest consumer market. Their population is what, 330 or so million people, give or take something. But their purchasing power is second to none. It's number one in the world. So the largest market that we can export to is the US, and because of that, it's something we would definitely not want to do, stopping trade with them. Then we would have to look for alternative markets, or we for our goods. See, our ambition is to become a major manufacturing power, right? Right now, the world is seeking to diversify from China. So, which nation can replace China as the major manufacturer? It's only India, obviously, because of the scale that we have, the huge population, the huge resources, the huge size of the nation, and so on and so forth. So we have to become a manufacturing power. But if we are in a situation where we can't export to the US, if we are not doing a trade with the US, then where do we export to? All the goods we are manufacturing. Then you can have alternative markets like the EU, the European Union, which is not a bad alternative. It's not as big as the US overall. The EU is there, so we could potentially think of the EU, but that won't be the same as the US market. And another alternative is China. Well, is China an import dependent market? Absolutely not. They're an export dependent market. They are the world's largest manufacturer currently. Why would they need to import anything? So China is out of the question. So then what do we do with all the manufacturing if we are setting up manufacturing? We'll have to then depend on internal consumption, domestic consumption. But for that, you need purchasing power and whatnot, which kind of we don't have right now. So, so that's why it's best to not stop trade with the US, find some kind of negotiated deal, some kind of agreement with the US, whatever tariffs are mutually acceptable or whatever. So I think the negotiations will continue, and eventually, hopefully, we arrive at some kind of trade deal with the US, which makes sense, which is hopefully mutually beneficial. Govind says, can Russia afford to open multiple fronts with Finland and Poland? I don't think Russia can afford to do that. It makes no sense to fight so many multiple enemies at the same time. That's a mistake many leaders have done in the past. Napoleon, he sought to fight everybody at the same time. Everyone's my enemy, I'll fight everybody at the same time. What happened? Elba is what happened. Look it up. Abel was I, ere I saw Elba, the island of Elba, and then Saint Helena, and so on. So Napoleon, well, you see what happened to him? Another example is the great painter himself, the Austrian painter. So the Austrian painter, he also did something similar, trying to fight everybody at the same time. You're fighting the Allies, you're fighting the UK, you're fighting the Americans. Then you decide to start Operation Barbarossa and start a fight with Stalin as well. I mean, how many people can you fight at the same time? You can't. It's not a good idea. So I would say Russia cannot afford to open multiple fronts at the same time with Finland and Poland. They have to deal with Ukraine. Ukraine is a proxy war. They are fighting the entirety of NATO by proxy, essentially. It doesn't make sense for them to open multiple fronts. So, no. Answer is no. Right? Govind says, perfect time for China to take Taiwan. I am not sure about that. The US is too powerful. And even if China somehow does take Taiwan, which is a possibility, they will take possession of a destroyed, burnt out island with nothing of real value. That's what will happen. That's guaranteed. So what's the point then? See, the objective of conquest is not to conquer a wasteland. The objective of conquest is to conquer something of value, right? Otherwise, it's a hollow victory. It's not really a victory. So I'm not sure if it's the perfect time for China to take Taiwan. I don't think so. Not yet. Not yet. MK says, why is India focusing on chip fabs but not developing EUV lithography and EDA tools, risking import bans like the US imposed on China? Yeah, we do need to focus on lithography, photo lithography machines like what ASML has. The Chinese are developing those machines, that technology. What's EDA tools? I'll have to look into that. What are EDA tools? EDA tools. Electronic design automation tools, software suites used by engineers to design, analyze, and verify electronic systems and circuits. Yep. All of this is, India needs to definitely develop all of this. Photolithography. What is EUV lithography? EUV lithography. Extreme ultraviolet lithography is a form of photolithography, obviously, because ultraviolet. Yeah. So it's something India needs to do. You can't take shortcuts. You have to develop the entire suite of technologies at the same time, which complement each other. I am not sure. Is India not? What is India doing? Is India developing? Let's Google this together. Is India developing lithography technology? India is working to. It's not currently developing lithography technology itself. The country is focused on attracting foreign investment, collaborating with the Canon. Well, that's a problem. That's definitely a problem. So, yeah, I mean, that's not enough. That's not enough. I hope somebody in the government wakes up and understands this, that all of this needs to be done. It's not enough to just have chip fabs. You need to develop these technologies at home. Only then are you genuinely self-sufficient and technologically sovereign. So I don't know why it's not being done, but it does need to be done, and hopefully somebody here listens and hears this. Hopefully. Rohan Suneja says, do you think that recent unemployment and job crisis in EU is directly connected to the US? As the US is deindustrializing Europe through various means. Look, what you've seen in Europe in recent times is that their economy isn't doing well in the EU nations, right? Germany was in recession. I'm not sure what the economy is like in Germany right now. I've not looked at it, but yeah, the economy isn't doing well, and that causes all kinds of problems. Unemployment, job crisis, same thing. Yeah. And the question is, why is the European economy not doing well? So see, the European economy is dependent on Germany and France. Germany especially. Germany is the engine that drives the European economy. Germany is a manufacturing power, right? Now, what do you need to have a massive industrial base and sustain that and do well? You need cheap energy. You need a ready supply of cheap energy. That's what powers an economy. Because all work requires energy. All work requires energy. Please remember this. Now, Germany was importing cheap natural gas from Russia, wasn't it? Then what happened? Nord Stream was blown up, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and the flow of gas ended. And Germany then started doing poorly, and it went into a recession. So the US essentially has ensured that this cheap energy that was flowing into Europe from Russia, which has plentiful supplies of energy, that cheap supply of gas is no longer available, right? So that's one of the primary factors that has led to all the problems that we are seeing in Europe. So you could say that Europe is kind of being deindustrialized right now through various means. Who's behind that? It looks like maybe the US could be behind that. Possibly. You could put it that way. Possibly. Yes. Sergeant Skyland says, well, this should prove that our country is sovereign. No question about it. No question. What we are facing right now from the US, it shows, it proves that our country is sovereign. Only sovereign countries face these problems. If you are a vassal, you will not face these problems. You will not be treated like this because you're already, well, you're taken care of. So, yes, this proves that India is a sovereign nation. It's a sovereign country. And I would like to commend the government of India for standing up for India and taking really tough decisions. Geopolitical Dubai says, full support, sir. Well, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Jaideep Parmar says, a Bangla terrorist was found in Mizoram. Pak mischief. Project K, I would say. Project K is Cookie Land for Christ. It's a project that was started by the Biden regime, and I suppose it's still continuing. And one of the things the Biden regime did was a regime change operation, successful in Bangladesh. And they ousted the democratically elected Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, and they've put in a puppet government, which is a dictatorship, essentially. It's a military dictatorship, right? And ever since that happened, Bangladesh essentially became East Pakistan. And there's a significant amount of synergy now between East and West Pakistan. So I had predicted at that time that we should expect an uptick in problems emanating from Bangladesh. Anti-India elements, terrorists, all of that. So if a Bangla terrorist was found in Mizoram, that's not surprising at all. Not surprising at all. Because Mizoram is one of the pieces in the puzzle when it comes to Project K. Project K is this project to create an artificial Christian cookie nation out of Mizoram, parts of Manipur, parts of Bangladesh, and parts of Burma. And this is a project that is being puppeteered from the other side of the planet. So I would not say it's Pak mischief. It's mischief at a bigger scale, way bigger scale than Pakistan. Ankita says, Mr. Netanyahu has offered to give tips to Mr. Modi on how to deal with Mr. Trump. Should this be considered seriously? I don't think Mr. Modi needs anybody's tips on how to deal with somebody. I think Mr. Modi can give tips to whoever it is. Really, let's Google this. Has Netanyahu offered to give tips to Mr. Modi? Let's see. Netanyahu Modi. Do we have any? Will advise Prime Minister Modi on how to deal with Trump, says Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu. He has offered to help India in dealing with 50% tariffs imposed by the US. And he has called the basis of the US-India relationship very solid and urged them to resolve whatever issues exist. Can give Modi some advice. Well, what can we say? What can we say? There is a special relationship that exists between Israel and the United States. So one could say that Mr. Netanyahu would know how to, let's say, handle Mr. Trump. Okay, that's all I'll say about this. So yeah, Mr. Netanyahu definitely will know how to handle Mr. Trump because he would have certain forms of leverage, let's say, but we don't have those forms of leverage. So I would say it's a very nice, kind offer, a friendly offer, but I would say it's kind of a half joking offer, most likely. Arun MR says, do you see China or Russia taking offensive measures against the US, say like attacking their territorial sovereignty and so on? No, I don't see that happening. No, that is suicidal. Not going to happen anytime soon. Jaideep Parmar says, well, I'm doing well, sir. How are you? I hope you're doing well as well. So Munir is giving new threats to India. Asim Munir. Anti-India protest in New York by immigrants. Well, the US finally has its mask off moment. Is the war coming? What should India do next? Okay. So the US is unhappy with India. So India has refused to bend the knee, to cave in, to kiss the ring, and so on. India has refused to vassalize itself and become a US vassal. And that has greatly upset Mr. Trump and hurt his feelings. So Mr. Trump is using Pakistan as a pressure point. And obviously, Mr. Trump is heavily invested in Pakistan. If you see my geostrategy videos, you will know how deeply Mr. Trump is involved in Pakistan, invested personally. So, Mr. Munir is Mr. Trump's blue-eyed boy right now. Yeah, a favorite of Mr. Trump. I mean, he's been invited to the US second time in like 2-3 months. So Mr. Munir is being given the red carpet treatment, and as such, Mr. Munir is feeling all emboldened. Yes, I can make strong statements. I can defeat India verbally. So he's making issuing statements like, if India builds a dam in Kashmir, then we will wait for the dam to be built, and then we will what hit it with missiles, 10 missiles or something. That's what I heard that he said. And if there are anti-India protests in New York, well, those are obviously done with the approval of the US government, obviously. So the US finally has its mask off moment. Like I've said, look, the US seeks to contain India. The US seeks to ensure that India doesn't become the next China in the next 20 years, right? That's always been their objective, and they've always taken actions along those lines. All the subnational diplomacy and whatever they're doing, Project K, the regime change operations in East and West Pakistan, all of that stuff, it's all aimed at towards containing India, right? So the mask off, well, I've always seen through the mask, but now I'm glad the rest of India is seeing because of Mr. Trump's activities, let's say. Yeah. So is a war coming? No, there's no war coming. The US doesn't want war. They know Pakistan can't win a war against India. The US won't go to war with India. What's the need for that? What's the reason? No reason for that. But they can use Pakistan possibly to try and create problems with India. But Pakistan obviously isn't in any shape to create real problems for India. If there's a full-fledged war, if for example Operation Sindhur had gone on for another 3 days, Pakistan would have been in ruins, possibly. We had already crossed their so-called nuclear red lines. Very badly we had crossed the nuclear red lines. So their nuclear threat, their nuclear bluff is gone. It's called, right? So Pakistan's nuclear bluff won't work. We have crossed their red lines massively during Operation Sindoor. So I don't see a war coming with Pakistan. If a war does happen with Pakistan, Pakistan will be in ruins. It will be a smoldering set of ruins, right? So a war isn't coming. And if it comes, we'll win. What should India do next? Stay calm. Carry on. Okay? That's what India has to do. Whatever pain comes our way from the US, swallow it. Don't respond in an immature manner. Stay mature, stay calm, carry on. It's a 20-year slog. It's a 20-year marathon for us. We have to build our economy. Once we are at a $15 trillion mark, $20 trillion mark, we're going to be a whole different beast. We have to reach there somehow, anyhow, the next 20 years. That's the real work we have to do. That's what India needs to do next. One step at a time. We are climbing Mount Everest. We are now at base camp and we have to start the climb. So you don't look up. You look in front of you. One step, one foot in front of the other, and keep going. That's what India has to do for the next 20 years. Mr. Strange says, why this late announcement by the Indian Air Force of Pakistani jets being downed? So the announcement was made yesterday that India destroyed 5 Pakistani fighter jets in the air using the S-400 system. Yes. And we also destroyed several F-16s on the ground. We also destroyed a Pakistani AWACS aircraft and so on. So this was announced yesterday. Why wasn't this announced once Operation Sindoor went into a state of a pause, May 10th? Why not then? See, India was being nice to Mr. Trump. It was a friendly gesture towards Mr. Trump. This would have embarrassed Mr. Trump that his assets essentially were destroyed. US F-16s, possibly US personnel who were babysitting those F-16s. It's embarrassing for the US, for a Russian system operated by India to destroy American assets. It's embarrassing. It shows that Russian systems are superior to US systems. So this was a friendly gesture towards Mr. Trump, considering the fact that India and the US have a good relationship and the two leaders, Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump, are on good terms. A friendly gesture towards Mr. Trump. And what did Mr. Trump give us in return? Everything we have seen. So now that the gloves are off and the relationship is in the rocks, we might as well announce it. So That kind of is what happened, right? Okay. Aniket Idate says, are we living in a world with competent leaders? Modi, India rising, India, Putin, USSR, um, Putin, USSR to Russia, Netanyahu, Xi Jinping, Javier Milei. My comment. We have pretty competent leaders right now. Uh, who are the leaders I see as competent? With that would be controversial. Well, so be it. Mr. Modi, Mr. Putin, Mr. Xi Jinping, definitely very competent leaders. I would say even Mr. Netanyahu is a very competent leader. He's facing all kinds of domestic troubles, but that's a whole different story. But overall, he is a pretty competent leader, no question. Javier Milei is doing a good job in Argentina. He has shored up the Argentine economy. Yeah, that's what I can think of. In the EU, I think Mr. Macron is a pretty competent leader himself. No question about that. He's doing a pretty good job overall of marshalling his nation through these troubled times. So we are indeed living in a world with pretty competent leaders. And the top three, I would say, are Mr. Modi, Mr. Xi, and Mr. Putin. I would say Mr. Putin, who has been in power since what? Ever since Mr. Yeltsin stepped down. Well, has the longest track record. Very solid track record. And if when Mr. Putin eventually steps down because of advancing age, when he eventually does that, whenever it is, if he gets the transition of power right, and he gives power to the right leader, somebody as competent as him, then history will remember Mr. Putin as Putin the Great. So yeah, definitely one of the great leaders that Russia has produced. And Mr. Modi, probably India's greatest prime minister thus far, since 47. And Mr. Xi Jinping is the current emperor of China. I think he's also solid, very competent from his nation's perspective. So yeah, we are living in an era of pretty solid, robustly competent world leaders. Siddhant Verma says, Chechens destroyed many Russian tanks via guerrilla tactics. Chechens, Ingush, Circassians are non-Indo-European. How did Chechnya become integrated into the Russian Federation despite historical conflicts, and how did they resist? Is the Chechen language a non-Indo-European language? The Circassians, as far as I know, are Indo-Europeans. Ingushetians, I'm not sure. Chechens, Dagestanis. Let's see if Chechen is an Indo-European language. I am not an expert on the Chechenian language. Let's see. Chechen language. What language family does it fall under is the question. Let's see Wikipedia first of all. It's a Northeast Caucasian language or Caspian languages. What language family is this? Well, it's one of the world's primary language families. You are right, sir. The Chechen language is a non-Indo-European language. Fascinating. What about the Ingushetian language? Ingushetia language. Ingush language. Well, what language family does it belong to? Northeast Caucasian. Wow, you are absolutely right. Now let's see Circassian. Okay. Let us see the Circassian language. You are utterly correct. You are utterly correct. Even this is a non-Indo-European language. Fascinating. Right. You are right. So you are utterly right. Chechnya, so the Chechen language, the English language, and the Circassian language, these are non-Indo-European languages, which means that these peoples, these ethnicities are non-Indo-European. They're not part of our ethnicity, broader ethnicity, the Indo-European ethnicity. They're not. So does that mean that Chechnya should not be part of the Russian Federation? What about the Yakut people? What about the Tuvan people? What about the Tatar people? Even these peoples are non-Indo-European people, but they are part of the Russian Federation, right? And they've also had, the Tatars have had historical conflicts with the Russians, 18th, 19th century. Oh, terrific historical conflicts with the Russians, the Tatars. But they are part of the Russian Federation. And you know what they say in Russia? Scratch a Russian, you'll find a Tatar inside. That sort of thing, because they're all intermixed now. That sort of thing. So you see, Russia is a multi-ethnic country. If you go to the far east of Russia, you will see people who look like Mongols, essentially, right? The Tuvan people, the people who even Mongols. You even have ethnic Mongols in Russia. Russia even has a completely Buddhist part of Russia, and so on. So, so Russia is that sort of a nation. It's a multi-ethnic nation, multicultural nation. Islam is one of the primary religions. Buddhism is also not insignificant in Russia. And obviously Orthodox Christianity is there. So, excuse me. So how did Chechnya become integrated into the Russian Federation? Well, by conquest. By conquest. Russia conquered all these territories. It was by conquest, and obviously there was resistance. And like you say, in the 1990s, there were two Chechen wars. And Chechnya won the first Chechen war. They became essentially independent for a while. And there was a huge setback for Russia under the visionary leadership of Shri Boris Yeltsin. Yeah, terrible. Yeltsin messed up. And then Putin comes to power, and Putin straight away goes back to war with the Chechens, and he wins the second Chechen war. He ensured that they won. And that's how Chechnya was reintegrated into Russia. And then you have the Kadyrov family, which comes into the picture, and so on. You can look it up, the Kadyrov family. Currently, who's the leader of Chechnya? The king of Chechnya? It is Mr. Ramzan Kadyrov. But the original king of Chechnya was his father, Ahmad Kadyrov. What was his name? I think it was Ahmad Kadyrov. Let's see. Kadyrov. Oops. Kadyrov. Let's see. So Ramzan Kadyrov's dad was Ahmad Kadyrov. That's right, and he was assassinated via a. It was a bomb that killed him. Anyhow, long story. So Chechnya was integrated by force into Russia. MK says, why is Israel cooperating with Turkey and Azerbaijan against Armenia? And what are its objectives and interests in doing so? Well, excellent question. I have obviously spoken about this in the past in great detail, but I'm very happy to explain again. So let's go. Let's go to the map first of all, because the map explains a lot. So let's take a look at this region that we're talking about. Okay. We're talking about Azerbaijan, Armenia. Here we have Azerbaijan and Armenia. To the left of your screen, you have Armenia, this nation here. And to the right, you have Azerbaijan. Historically, all of Azerbaijan was part of the kingdom of Armenia. Historically. But that's old history. Doesn't matter now. So Armenia is sandwiched between Azerbaijan and Turkey. To the south of Armenia, you have an Indo-European nation, which is Iran. Now, if you look at Iran, the whole matter actually revolves around Iran, whether you realize or not. See, Iran is a nation that has lots of enemies. Ever since 1979, Iran has said that Israel doesn't deserve the right to exist. So obviously, Israel takes it very seriously, and they consider Iran to be their primary adversary in the region. And we know what happened recently, right? The war between Iran and Israel. So, if you look at Iran, about 50% of Iran's population is non-Persian. Only half of Iran's population is actually ethnically Persian. If you go to Iran, you will see lots of people who look almost European, because they were brought in from regions like Chechnya and other Turkic parts of Central Asia into Iran during a period when Iran was under Turkic occupation, just like India was under Turkic occupation. So Iran was ruled by Turks for a long period of history. And they brought in all these foreigners into Iran and settled them into Iran. So that's why about half of Iran's population is non-Persian. So if we go to the northwest of Iran, okay, places like Tabriz, etc., you will find that this region is called the East Azerbaijan province of Iran. And the people who live in this region are ethnically Azerbaijanis. Okay? So the logic is this. If Israel supports Azerbaijan, in its conflict against Armenia, then they will get favor from the Azerbaijani population of Iran as well, which means that they can spy in Iran and could possibly, potentially cause problems for Iran. So that should be the logic. That seems to be the logic that is driving the Israeli cooperation with Azerbaijan. And obviously, Azerbaijan is supported by Turkey. So that's why Israel is cooperating with Turkey and Azerbaijan in this matter against Armenia. That they will tell Armenia nothing personal, but we have this thing with Iran, and we need to have the Iranian Azeris on our side. Okay, hopefully that explains the way things are, why things are the way they are. Rishi Verma says, big fan. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, sir. The question is, how can India be so strong that no neighbor dares to mess with it? Through military power, through economic might, or another strategy? Everything boils down to the economy. See, if you want to be a massive military power, you need a lot of money for that, right? Which means that your economy needs to be massive enough to sustain a massive military. So without a powerful economy, you can't become a powerful military power unless you pour your entire economic might into your military matters, which Shri Chinggis Khan did essentially back in the day. His entire nation was mobilized into the military of Mongolia. That's an extreme example. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about India. We are not that sort of a nation. So for India to be super powerful militarily, see, if you want no neighbor to be able to dare to mess with you, you need a super powerful military, no question. But for that to happen, we need a super powerful economy. And not just a super powerful economy, we need to be technologically advanced as well, so that we are completely self-sufficient in military matters, in arms, ammunition, all of that. Drones, whether it's missiles, whether it is jet engines, whether it's fighter planes, submarines, nuclear submarines, warships, whatever you can imagine, satellites, lasers, all of that needs to be manufactured in-house. So we need to be technologically advanced as well. So if we want India to be so strong that no neighbor or anybody else dares to mess with us, we have to first be a massive economy. Secondly, we have to be technologically advanced at the cutting edge of technology. And that will make our military so powerful, nobody will dare mess with us. Okay. Abhishek says, why the US did not stop proxies for China, did not prop proxies for China like Pakistan? Why did the US not prop proxies for China like Pakistan? The US is propping up Pakistan. See, Pakistan is a mercenary nation. They will get into bed with whoever is willing to throw some cash at them. That's the kind of nation it is, sadly. Yes, they used to be our people, but they're not now. So the US, see, Pakistan was created as an artificial temporary nation by the UK to serve the UK's geopolitical interests in the region, the subcontinent and the Gulf region, that overall big region. But the UK by 1956 or 58 became a second-rate, third-rate world power after the failure of their Suez operation, which was in cooperation with the Israelis and the French. So then the US took over the mantle of the overlord of Pakistan. Okay. And they propped up Pakistan. They had various defense agreements with Pakistan. And after Christmas Day 1979, the US started funding Pakistani terrorism, essentially. And those funds were eventually used against India, right? All of that. Now, around 2012 or something, the US lost interest in Pakistan temporarily, and Pakistan went into bed with China. And the US was okay with it. The US was okay with it because no US assets were being exposed to China. But now, 2022 onwards, the US did a regime change operation in Pakistan, ejected Imran Khan, brought in Shahbaz Sharif, and now Pakistan is once again a US vassal. But it's kind of cooperating with China also at the same time. And the Chinese have sold Pakistan military equipment and so on. So Pakistan is in bed with two partners at the same time, essentially. But more with the US. The US is the bigger daddy. So that's how it is. That's how it is. So the US is propping up what you can consider a Chinese proxy at the same time. Okay. Sarvesh Verma says, what country will leave NATO in 30, 40 years? Germany, France, UK? 30, 40 years, I have no idea what will happen. Maybe we have no idea what's going to happen in 30, 40 years. It's too far away for us to envisage. Maybe we will be on Mars by 2030, in 30 years, 40 years. So today is 2025. 30 years is what? 2055. The world will be a whole different place. We will have flying cars in 2055. We may have extraterrestrials on Earth by 2035. No idea. But what nations could leave NATO in the next 10 years? I think no nation will leave NATO in the next 10 years. A situation where nations leave NATO will only happen if the US is no longer the primary power in the world. Well, that would mean the decline and the end of the US empire. Only then will you have nations leaving NATO. So I don't see that happening, at least in the next 10 years. 30, 40 years, God knows. No idea. Okay. Solo Leveling says, if India purchases the Sukhoi 57 or S-500, given the reaction to the S-400 purchase, do you think this move may destroy any remaining bipartisan goodwill towards India? Well, if we have to purchase something for the sake of our national security, we should not be concerned with whether we will affect goodwill towards us in a certain country. Of course, that certain country is very important, no question. So look, now it's clear. Let's assess the situation right now. It is clear that India has lost whatever trust it had towards the US defense establishment, towards the US government overall, the Trump regime, right? Whatever trust existed has evaporated, because you can see that the Pakistani military is showing a lot of synergy with the US military right now. The Asim Munir yesterday he was meeting with American generals and all, so there's a lot of synergy between the two militaries, right? And we know that the Pentagon has always favored Pakistan. So that whatever trust had been built up over the last 10 years or so, 11 years, that has evaporated. So India is not going to purchase any more American defense equipment. No F-35s or whatever. But we do need fifth generation fighter planes as a stopgap measure until, let's say, 2035, when we will have a certain number of Indian-made fifth generation fighter planes. So we have a period of 10 years that we need to fill. We need a certain number of fifth generation fighter planes for the period. So what options do we have? The Rafale is a 4.5 generation fighter plane. We need something better than that, because China may be selling their fifth generation fighter planes to Pakistan, possibly. That may happen. So we need something. So if it's not the F-35, what options do we have? It's either the Rafale, which is not fifth generation, or the Sukhoi 57. Now, people will say that the Sukhoi 57 is not as good as the F-35. I don't care. If we get a full transfer of technology, or even a decent transfer of technology, it will help us tremendously. And it's not a bad aircraft. So most likely India will go ahead and purchase the Sukhoi 57. And the F-500 most likely is a tremendously powerful missile defense system, even better than the S-400. So if it makes sense for us, we should purchase that as well. Look, the attitude and approach of the US is already that of containment towards India. Containment. I don't care what they say. I don't care what their politicians say. Oh, we have goodwill towards India. We like India. We would like good relations with India. Blah, blah, blah. Words, words, words. But what are their actions? Look at their actions. They're diplomats. They engage in subnational diplomacy in India. They're trying to create fissures and divisions within India. Their embassy props up anti-India YouTubers. That's one. Secondly, they have carried out 2 regime change operations in our periphery, East and West Pakistan. That is an anti-India move. Third, they're running Project K, Cookie Land for Christ. So if you look at their actions are those of containing India. Their actions are detrimental to our interests. I don't care what they say verbally. That so-called goodwill, bipartisan goodwill, is only verbal goodwill. Their actions are all anti-Indian. Now look at Trump and the tariffs. So I think we should stop worrying about goodwill or the lack of it and do whatever is best for our interests. All right? Okay. Premier League says, "Hello, Sar." Well, hello, Sar. You've defined what the deep state, what the US deep state is, but you've never named any members of the deep state. Which people would you suspect are members of the deep state? Well, if I knew, I would say, would that I could. Would that I could. If I knew, I would name them, but I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are. I have no idea. Look, okay, let's once again try to redefine what the US deep state is. Um, the US deep state, if it does exist, would be an extra constitutional, extra democratic, extra governmental power center that controls all the levers of power in the US, if it does exist. And some of it may not be extra governmental, some of it may be in the government, maybe it's half in the government, half outside. So some of it would be, so it would be a small number of people who have all the power. So for example, you know that the US Federal Reserve Bank, which is the bank that essentially owns the US, essentially. Well, that bank, who are its shareholders? Who are the people who own the bank? That is a secret. Now, if you ask Google, if you ask your chat GPT or whatever, they'll say, no, it's not the case. The shareholders are other banks and so on and so forth. They will give you a roundabout story which will never give you the answer. The truth is that it's hidden. The US Federal Reserve Bank is a privately owned entity. Who are the people who own it? Can you imagine the bank, the national bank of a country is a privately owned entity? It should be owned by the government, but it's not. So clearly somebody owns it, or some set of people own the bank. Who are they? We don't know. That's why I say I don't know. You understand? And obviously there are people who work for the deep state. The richest people of the world that we know of will probably be the poorest people in the deep state. That sort of thing. So, I can't answer the question because I don't have the answers. But clearly something like this does exist. I think it's pretty clear to everybody by now. The US is just an autocracy masquerading as a democracy. The US president doesn't really have all the power. The US president himself serves somebody. There's this song by Bob Dylan. What is it called? You may be the devil or you may be the Lord, but you've got to serve somebody. Or something like that. Yeah, so you've got to serve somebody. So even the US president serves somebody. So that's why I don't really know who those members are, right? I hope I explained clearly why we don't know who those people are. Okay, Arun says, how is it that Iran, despite being heavily sanctioned, has advanced drones, cheap and advanced roads, metros, and even indigenous supercars, and they have twice the GDP per capita income than India? Okay, so their GDP per capita is twice that of India, which is not a huge difference, but Iran is heavily sanctioned. They have advanced drones and all that. That's good. We also have advanced drones and so on. That's fine. But look at the roads in Iran. Beautiful, clean roads, beautiful, clean cities, all of that. And look at the roads in India, in the major cities in India. Why is it like that? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. Why? Why Iran, despite being heavily sanctioned and facing all these troubles, has so much better living standards than India? In India, the situation is horrible, abysmal. Why? The problem is corruption, allegedly. It is alleged that India's number one problem is allegedly corruption, which allegedly exists all across the spectrum, allegedly, of the Indian governance machinery, allegedly. That's the problem. So we have all the money in the world. That's not alleged, that's true. India has a gigantic economy. The Indian government has access to enormous amounts of resources. But how are the resources being used? Where are the resources going, actually? Right? I think everybody can see what's happening, but you allegedly can't dare to speak up. So that's the major problem in India. So my question is, where is India's war on corruption? Corruption allegedly runs the entire country. The entire system allegedly runs on corruption only. So where's India's war on corruption? When is it going to happen? That is the solution to all of India's problems. Mr. Sid says, what are your top 5 fighter jets globally? The F-22 Raptor is number 1, as far as I understand. Best fighter plane ever. F-22 Raptor. Okay, what else do we have? F-35, I'm not going to put the F-35 anywhere. We have the Saab Gripen, we have the Eurofighter Typhoon, we have the Rafale, we have the Sukhoi series, the Sukhoi 30, the Sukhoi 35, Sukhoi 57. We have the Chinese J-21 and J-31. Am I missing something? So these are some of the fighter planes I can think of right now. We also have older aircraft like the Mirage 2000 and the F-16s, FA-18s. Yeah, so I would say the best of the lot is the F-22 Raptor. The US won't export it to anybody, not even to Israel, apparently. Yeah, wow. Would you believe that? So that obviously I would say is number 1. Number 2, what could be number 2? The F-16 is a workhorse. It's worked very well, but yeah, you know what happened in Pakistan. So I would not put the F-16 up there. See, if you want me to give you a rating, top 5, I can only give you a rating of battle-tested aircraft. Theoretically, technically, which aircraft are better, anybody can give an opinion. But aircraft that are tested in battle-tested aircraft, which are these? F-22, I'm not sure, but I think the F-22 is still number 1. Which aircraft have seen action and they've come out on top? MiG-21. I don't know about MiG-21. The Rafales have done pretty well in contested airspace to some extent. The Sukhoi 30 MKI or Sukhoi 30, I think it's done decently well. But it's not, I mean, we haven't had a large-scale war somewhere where an aircraft can be properly battle-tested. So I'm not sure. I think the F-22 Raptor is up top. And maybe the other aircraft, I can't really say. Maybe the Sukhoi 30, 35 series. Maybe the Sukhoi 57 also may be good. The Rafale is definitely a good aircraft, but I'm not sure if it's up at the top. And the European fighter planes like the Typhoon and the Gripen, have they ever been battle tested? I don't know. The Chinese aircraft, the J-21 and J-31 or whatever those are, JF-17, we'll not discuss that. That's a variant of the MiG-21. So even the Chinese aircraft aren't battle tested. So it's really hard to give you a ranking of aircraft. The only correct way of giving a ranking of aircraft is you can rank aircraft based on their performance in war and battle. And that's something we haven't seen. And that's a good thing that we haven't had wars of that scale and magnitude. So I don't know. I would say the F-22 is up top. And then there's a whole bunch of aircraft that are decent. Yeah, that's what I can say. I don't really have a top 5 list. I have a bunch of aircraft that are decent, and then the F-22, I think, which is the best one. Okay, Vallabh says, will these tariffs affect the IT sector? What IT employee working in servicing company like in city like Pune is supposed to do to survive looking for next 20 years? Look, thus far, the tariffs are not aimed at the IT sector thus far, okay? Trump hasn't imposed tariffs on the IT sector thus far. But it could happen. It could happen. If that happens, then India's IT exports become either less competitive or non-competitive. What could that cause? What effect could that have? So let's say someday in the coming days, Trump decides to impose hypothetically 50% tariffs on the Indian IT sector, hypothetically. That would cause tremendous damage to the Indian IT sector, because Indian IT services exports will become highly less competitive compared to what they used to be. Then what do you do? Then what will Indian IT companies do? They will lay off people. They will lay off employees. and that can be terrible if you are an employee in an IT company. So what do you do? I'm not sure what you can do. If there are layoffs, significant layoffs in the IT sector in India, that can cause a crisis in India, job crisis. Lots of highly qualified, highly experienced, talented people suddenly having to become jobless. Or typically, they will first lay off people who are on the bench, right? We know what a bench is, right? First of all, they'll lay off those who are on the bench, and then they will lay off the junior programmers and so on, junior staff. But yeah, that's bad. It affects the flower of our industry, the youngsters, right? Um, so yeah, this is something that could happen. What can IT employees working in a servicing company like Pune, etc., what can you do to survive? That's a tough question. What do you do to survive? Um, Maybe you can get into freelancing. If you're in freelancing, I suppose, if you're working on a gig basis kind of thing, I don't think there's a tariff on that. So if you can find clients of your own as a freelancer, which is pretty tough itself, because if you're working for a company, you don't need to go and hunt for clients, right? The company has clients and you work for them. But if you're a freelancer, now suddenly you're in the face with the prospect of, where do I find clients? So that's something you will have to do, perhaps. So yeah, it's pretty tough. It's pretty uncertain times right now. And what I would suggest is that everybody who's in the IT sector needs to take certain precautions, get your finances in order, have as much savings as possible, have options somewhere. Maybe your spouse works in a different industry, different sector, whatever. That's good. That's a safety net for the family. So I think, bulk up your savings, invest in whatever you can, your property. Or I'm not giving advice. I'm not giving any investment advice. But yeah, you need to take whatever precautions you deem necessary, and whatever is possible. Yeah, because this could happen. Trump could possibly impose tariffs on the IT sector, which could affect both nations. But well, Trump is Trump. He could do that. So I hope it doesn't happen, and I wish you the best. It will be bad for us, and I hope it doesn't happen. Nirbai says, how do you see the India-US relationship in the future? It will all depend on what happens in the next few months. What do I mean by that? It will all depend on what happens in the next few months between Mr. Modi, Mr. Putin, and Mr. Xi. If Mr. Modi, Mr. Putin, Mr. Xi can get their act together, it will all depend on Mr. Xi, actually, Mr. Xi Jinping. But if that happens, if some kind of understanding is reached and some kind of economic grouping is created, then, well, it's the end of the India-US relationship, which is something we would not really want, because the US is a big market and we have so many people there. So it will also depend a lot on the attitude and approach of Mr. Trump. So if the tariffs start biting very badly at the US public, at the American public, and if the economy is hit significantly, then Mr. Trump will have to back off, because he will otherwise lose popularity. But if he backs off, then again he will look like a weak president. He is putting himself into a corner. But anyhow, it will all depend on the approach and attitude of Mr. Trump. If he decides to impose even more tariffs, or if he decides that we should go ahead and do some kind of trade deal with lower tariffs, hopefully. If that happens, then the India-US relationship will be okay economically. But strategically, whatever trust was there is gone. So the best case scenario is that Trump backs down, Trump sees some sense, and his diplomats and our diplomats, they work something out, and we agree to some kind of a trade deal with whatever reciprocal tariffs we need to apply on each other, that sort of thing, and we carry the relationship forward. That's the best case scenario. So it will be a decent economic relationship in that best case scenario. But strategically, there's not going to be no trust now. Worst case scenario is that Trump imposes bigger sanctions on India. Then we decouple from the US, and then we find some kind of way of coexisting economically in a beneficial way with Russia and China and other nations who are willing to work with us, like Brazil and whoever else. So that's not that of a good situation, and that is complete decoupling between India and the US, and then the US will try and impose additional pain on India using Pakistan or whatever else. So the best case scenario is a decent relationship economically. The worst case scenario is a complete decoupling, and that will be bad in so many ways. The shift room says, would you define Israel's actions in Gaza as genocide? What's the definition of genocide? Let's go and find out. I would say, look, let's not define genocide or whatever. When a nation faces a massive terrorist attack, like what Israel faced in 2023, they're gonna respond disproportionately. If Hamas did not want whatever Israel has done to Gaza, then they should not have unleashed a terrorist attack on Israel, right? After that, what happened? Israel obviously has essentially flattened Gaza to a certain extent. I suppose there would be significant casualties and so on. It would not have happened if Hamas had not done what it did. Right? A nation does have the right to defend itself. And I will never ever condone terrorism. And why was Hamas in power? Because the people of Gaza voted for Hamas. Didn't they? Did they not vote for Hamas? Did the people of Gaza not know that Hamas was storing all kinds of rockets and whatnot? Did they not know that all these tunnels existed? Did they not participate in the terrorist attack against Israel? Yeah. So I would say that Israel, as the nation that was at the receiving end of this horrific terrorist attack, reacted disproportionately. See, when you retaliate against your adversary, you want the retaliation to be so disproportionate that the adversary will never ever dare to do it again. That's a principle in warfare from times immemorial, right? So that's how I see it. I obviously do not want people to suffer. Nobody should suffer. But then if you don't want to suffer, don't be terrorists, is what I would say. And the same applies to Pakistan. Abhi bhi samay hai. Sudhar jao, Pakistan. Abhishek Jha, thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Pratik says, is Trump an example of give a man power, he will show his true colors compared to his words used in first and second term? Yeah. Yes. See, there are lots of people who are very nice because they are powerless. But the moment they gain some kind, even a little bit of power, you see their true colors. So you are right. I would answer your question with one word, which is yes. Yash says, this is not trade war against India, it's a regime change operation, either demanded by the deep state or Asim Munir in return for favor for private benefits to Tapu, you mean Trump, for minerals. Well, Trump, the US would love a regime change in India. They would love for somebody else to come to power in Delhi. Mr. Modi is so inconvenient for the US, isn't he? He's standing up to the US. He is friends with Mr. Putin. He's going to China. He's going to meet with Mr. Xi and see what can be done there. Mr. Modi is standing up straight. He is not bending down. He's not bowing down. He's not caving in. He is extraordinarily inconvenient for the US. The US would want nothing more than somebody else in the hot seat in Delhi. Right? So, and obviously, when Trump imposes tariffs on India, there will be certain political dispensations in India who will say that this is a failure of Mr. Modi. And I suppose a lot of Indian idiots will believe that because our education system doesn't teach us how to think critically, right? So they have been made idiots by the education system. Our people are the brightest in the world, but the education system turns our people into fools and idiots. So you have to deprogram that. Anyhow, that's a different story. So yeah, if you have, let's say hypothetically, politicians or political parties hypothetically in India who are on the deep state payroll, and they start this campaign, this narrative campaign that Mr. Modi's foreign policy is failing and so on, is a failure, then that can be construed as a regime change operation. Yes, you're laying the groundwork on the long run for a regime change operation. So you are right from that perspective. You're right. Vijay Vicky says, Asim Munir is in the US. At a talk in Florida, he said that when our existence is threatened, we will take half the world's population with us. What are your thoughts? Joke. Asim Munir does not control those nukes. If he controlled those nukes, then what was he doing when we crossed his nuclear threshold in May 7, 8, what 8, 9, 10, whichever those three days were? What happened? We crossed the Pakistani nuclear threshold, their so-called nuclear red lines. We crossed them. We On the last day, in a space of about 20 minutes, we hit what 9 Pakistani air bases. Our jets were flying over the Pakistani air bases. What happened to their nuclear threshold? Yeah, so that bluff has been called, and it is almost guaranteed that Pakistan doesn't really have nuclear weapons of its own. Most likely, those nuclear weapons are American nuclear warheads. That's how I see it. I have no evidence to back it up, but I have a brain, which is a half decent brain at least. So I believe those are American nuclear warheads. So I don't think Asim Munir has the authorization or the power to use those warheads unless he's given a green light from Washington. Sudhindra Desai, well, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Pratik Voraji, thank you. Sushant Bharadwaj, thank you very much. Very kind of you, sir. Thank you. AVM says, is it possible that Indian IT companies not innovating is by design and not because of their low risk tolerance to be use in times like these? So we are in times like these right now. And Indian IT companies, we know that they have not innovated. Look, first of all, we have to understand that we should not overly criticize India's IT companies. We should not be too harsh in our criticism of our IT companies, because they have transformed India. They have given employment to millions of Indians. They have brought so many Indians out of poverty into the middle class status. They have transformed the country in the past 30 years. Right? No question about that. Show me any other industry that has done that. But it is true that they have failed to innovate. They have simply stuck to the old formula of labor arbitrage, and they've done a good job at that. But they have not wanted to innovate. They've not ever tried to develop their own products. So is this by design? Well, it's obviously by design, and it's obviously because of low risk tolerance. The question is, how can that be of use in times like these? Tell me how it can be of use in times like these. If Trump decides, I'm going to impose 50% tariffs or 100% tariffs on India's IT exports to the US, then what use are they in times like these? What use are they? How will they compete then? But if they had products that the world wanted, if they had created products that the world craved, then those tariffs would not work. You see, if they had created products, there's so many softwares and apps that the world uses, things that the world can't live without, right? But our companies have done none of that. They've produced nothing. They're simply using that old formula of labor arbitrage. So when you are hit with tariffs, there's nothing you can do about it. But when you have innovative products that the world craves, even the tariffs won't work. So, yeah, that's the situation. Prashant says, how to safeguard dams after threats from Munir? Well, the threats are verbal. We have safeguards. And you see, look, it's pretty hard to safeguard. You can damage a dam significantly with even an anti-tank missile. I'm not sure if there's a defense against an anti-tank missile, right? So it's pretty difficult to safeguard dams from threats. I'm sure there are lots of options that the Indian Armed Forces have even in these situations. But we have to understand that these threats are verbal threats. And all these threats, all these possibilities will have already been taken into account during the planning phase and the creation when we are planning the building of dams and all that. And the best safeguard is that if you touch our dams, we're going to flatten your Rawalpindi or whatever. That's the best safeguard, and we can actually execute that. We can actually, if that promise is made, we can actually execute the promise. So that's the deal. ICMB says, what's the story of the Indian Tajikistan base? So we have Aini or Farkhor. What is it? Let's go to Google. Farkhor. Let's go to Farkhor. Farkhor Air Base. So there is this Farkhor Air Base in Tajikistan. Is it operated by India currently? Not sure. It's not far from Afghanistan. Let's go to map. Yes. So it is alleged that this is an Indian air base. Let's go to the satellite images. Farkhor, whatever you want to call it. And if you zoom out, you should be able to see an air base somewhere here. Where is this? There has to be an air base. I've seen that in the past. Maybe outside the city, possibly. Farkhor Air Base. Well, so as you can see, it's rather hard to discern an air base here, but I remember seeing one here. So that's one place where India allegedly has an air base. It's on the border with Afghanistan, as you can see. This is the border with Afghanistan. Okay, that's one. Okay, the other one is Aini Air Base, Dushanbe, Tajikistan. Where is this? Now, this is a proper air base, as you can see. And if you zoom out, you will see where it's located. Where is it located? It is in a very different part of Tajikistan. Aini. So let's zoom in once again. Do we see any activity? We can see plenty of military-looking aircraft over here. Now, who operates these? These helicopters look like Russian-made helicopters. And what do we have here? We have some kind of fighter planes here, 3 fighter planes. And we have hangars and whatnot. Okay, so it is alleged that India operates 2 air bases in Tajikistan. One is Farkhor, one is Aini. I'm not sure to what extent this is true or untrue. I'm not sure the government of India has ever clarified the matter. So we don't know, but it is said that India has a couple of air bases. I was not able to find one in Farkhor, but I'm sure it's hidden somewhere. But yeah, so that's what I can tell you, sir. MK says you say that Indians are naive in geopolitics. Which nations people do you consider pragmatic? What have they done to demonstrate pragmatism? See, what do I mean by naive in geopolitics? It means that you don't understand how power works. You don't understand how international relations work. Most Indians believe that by shouting on debates, you are defeating the enemy, and so on. And most Indians don't understand certain basic principles in geopolitics, which there's a whole bunch of principles. But the thing is this: in India, you don't teach things. Okay, let me reformulate that. How many of you know what is the Indian national interest? Do you know what the Indian national interest is? If I ask you to define what is India's national interest, will you know that? You don't. If you ask Americans to define that, they will have a pretty good idea of what America's national interests are. If you ask Russians to define what Russia's national interests are, they'll tell you what those are. And if you ask Indians, they will have some opinion, but they will have wildly differing opinions, and the opinions very often don't make sense. So there's so much that Indians don't understand, and it is not the fault of Indians. It is because we never teach these things. Is the national interest some kind of vague, undefined thing, or is it something that you can define with precision and clarity? Of course it is. Right? And what's pragmatism? Pragmatism means being realistic. What is pragmatism? It is what was the policy of Sri Vishnugupta Chanakya. Extraordinarily pragmatic. So it's all part of our culture. It's all part of our heritage, but we have completely forgotten everything. How do you demonstrate pragmatism? By sometimes compromising, by not becoming emotional about compromises when the nation makes compromises, by understanding that there's a difference between the short-term play and the long-term play. There's so much that is within the ambit of pragmatism. So, I can't explain all of this in a 5-minute answer, but yeah, That's the deal. Anonymous scientist says could not watch latest episodes working on a paper. Well, I wish you the best on your paper, sir. And whenever it's out, do let us know. I would be very happy to see what the paper is about. So all the best. Do well in the paper. And it's okay. You can watch the latest episodes whenever you feel like. It's all over here, right? All right. Yash says one way of regime change is to tarnish the image of a leader by using a set of accidents, Air India, economic downturn, to demotivate people and to vote for a deep state selected puppet. Well, who could that be? I wonder. Who could that be? You are right. You can see a regime change operation takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. You have to create the groundwork for that. You have to create a layer of sentiment, multiple layers of sentiment to make this happen. And eventually, a few years down the line, you can execute what you're trying to execute. So you have to prop up somebody. Let's say you have to prop up Zelensky. Zelensky is a great man. He used to be a comedian, but he's now a great man. So you prop up Zelensky. You have people, your media minions write glowing articles about Zelensky. You have your news channels praise Zelensky and lionize him. And on the other hand, whoever the current leader is, you write articles, a slew of articles criticizing and critiquing him and ridiculing him and all that. And overall, after a period of time, if you just continue this, people's opinion changes, and then it's easy to make something happen. So you're right. That's how it's done. Pre-LTP says, what country will be rising superpowers of next century? What chat control EU online security act set up UK? Excuse me, what? How chat control EU plus online safety act UK set up similar laws could affect India in the future? I'm not aware of these things. But which country will be a rising superpower of the next century? We are in India obsessed with this term superpower, aren't we? So let me define what I mean by the term superpower. For me, a superpower is a nation that can intervene militarily anywhere on the planet at 60 minutes notice. That's my definition of the term superpower. A nation that can intervene anywhere on the surface of the planet at 60 minutes notice. Intervene militarily. And now the definition will expand into space also. So that's my definition of superpower. So we Indians are obsessed with the term superpower, but we don't even know what the definition is. At least I have a definition that I use. When people use the term superpower in the media or wherever, do they know what it means? Do they even have a definition? I'm not sure. Which country will be the superpower of the next century? I have absolutely no idea. It depends on so many factors, so many variables. I would say that if we get our act right, we could be one of the nations. I mean, typically you only have one or two superpowers. Will the US be a superpower in the next century? I think maybe not. Maybe not. We'll see. So, see, the next century is what? 75 years ago, 75 years away. That is way too difficult to predict. I would only say this, that there is something called the Lindy effect. The Lindy effect says that if something has existed for X amount of time, it will continue to exist for another X amount of time more. If a movie has been popular for 100 days, then most likely it will be popular for another 100 days. If a book has been popular for 20 years, then most likely it will continue to be popular for at least another 20 years. Okay? If a nation has been powerful for 50 years, then most likely it will continue to be powerful for another 50 years. If a civilization has existed for 10,000 years, most likely it will continue to exist for another 10,000 years. So that way, if you look at it, I think India should be possibly, I hope India is a superpower in the next century. Hopefully this century. In the second half of the century itself. We'll see. Godliness says, I live in the West, and what I have observed in the past few years, still the language wars between the English, the French, and the Germans, and many more, are very relevant. It feels like Europe is very divided in reality. Of course it is divided. If you have been on the ground in Europe, you will see how proud they are about their languages and their cultural differences. Europe used to be a very insular set of societies. When I was a kid, if you met a French person who spoke English and you tried to speak English with them, they would answer you in French. Je ne sais pas. I don't speak English. They will refuse to speak English because they were proud of being French, and they considered English to be an inferior language, an inferior culture. The French and the English have this long-standing thing, right? 1,000 years of enmity. So if you live in the West, if you live in Europe especially, there are language and cultural wars between the English, the French, and the Germans, the Italians, Italy, the Spanish, the Spanish, even the Dutch to some extent, and so much more, right? So it's very real. Europe is actually very divided. That's why I call the First and Second World Wars the European tribal wars. That's what it was. Look at the chaos that led to the First World War, and the consequences of that. It was all tribal warfare. Europe is indeed very divided in reality. So interesting observation that you have made, and I completely agree with you. Completely. Anonymous scientist says, sorry if it's a silly question. Let's see. No issues. Will US policy to bully India change after Trump? Or is it going to be a new normal for the US? You see, what Trump is going to achieve is that this is going to be a new normal. The damage that Trump is going to make, the damage that Trump is inflicting and he will continue to inflict if it doesn't change course immediately, that damage will become permanent. And later, if somebody comes to power, somebody else obviously will come to power after him. And even if the person asserts that I'm a friend of India, that relationship will have gone way beyond us retrieval. So, as of today, the strategic trust, that whatever level of strategic trust existed between India and the US has evaporated. India doesn't trust the US one bit now strategically, one bit. And that is not going to change because we have seen the approach and the policy and the attitude of the defense establishment, how warmly they welcome that Asim Munir fellow, and how deeply they are synergized with Pakistan. There's going to be no trust no matter what happens. So economic relations may continue. They may even get better after Trump. But that strategic trust, that some amount of it was built up over the past couple of decades, has evaporated. It's over. Yash says Munir may have informed Tapu, which I expect is Trump. Munir may have informed Trump that to realize your personal investments in Balochistan, Baloch protests must stop. You need to remove Modi to stop it. I suppose he must have said that. I mean, it's a dream come true for Asim Munir in Pakistan if Mr. Modi is no longer in power, right? Obviously. I mean, Mr. Modi, the kind of actions he has taken against Pakistan, how many Indian leaders have done that? The last Indian leader to take anything like that sort of action was Indira Gandhi, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, 1971, in which she gave the armed forces the go-ahead to bifurcate Pakistan. Right? Ever since then, no Indian Prime Minister has taken any harsh action against Pakistan. And Mr. Modi has done it. Right? So from the Pakistani perspective, that would be a dream come true if Mr. Modi is not in power in Delhi. So I'm sure this fellow Munir must have exhorted his boss, Mr. Trump, please, sir, please, kuch karo, kuch kijiye, sir. He would have done that. So I agree with you. Aman Patania says, huge love and support to you, for you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Very much so. And, I keep reminding myself every day that, it's a privilege that people want to listen to you. It's a privilege if you're in a position where people want to hear you and listen to you. So I don't ever take it for granted. I'm very thankful, very grateful to all of you for your viewership, for the fact that you turn up to ask me questions and hear me answer them. So thank you so much. I never ever take it for granted. Feminist Slayer says, after India cancelled the US deal over GMO seeds, what steps can India take to protect its indigenous seeds from GMO contamination and trade risks? Great question. So one of the major bones of contention is that India has refused to open India's market to these American GMO products, agricultural products, dairy products, and whatnot. We will not allow this to happen. What steps can India take to protect its indigenous seeds? Well, see, if you go to the US, okay, if you're flying to the US, they have some rules that you cannot carry certain products. You cannot carry some seeds, and you cannot carry these things, whatever. And you have to fill up a form and tell them that I'm not carrying anything, then they'll still check your luggage. And if they find something, they'll take some action against you. So I think we will have to tighten our border security and security at our ports of entry, all the airports where people come from abroad, come into India from abroad. We'll have to tighten the security, ensure that no seeds or GMO products are brought into India. If anything is found, we need to be very proactively and vigilantly confiscate and destroy that. That sort of thing needs to happen. So wherever we have ports of entry, whether they are airports or naval ports or whatever, we need to be super vigilant at these ports of entry and ensure that no such products are allowed in. And when it comes to imports, things that our companies are importing from the US or whatever, we'll have to be very strict on that as well. So the government will have to come up with a set of procedures to ensure that we are not in a situation where there is contamination from GMOs, right? G says, I'm moving to Kaliningrad for studies. From a geopolitical view, how do you see its role between Russia and the West evolving over the next 5 or 6 years? Interesting, very interesting place you're going to, Kaliningrad. So let me put that on the map. Let's check the map. It's an exclave. It's a Russian exclave. Königsberg, it used to be. And after the Second World War, Russia took it over after the Allies destroyed it. The Allies flattened Kaliningrad, Königsberg, and then Russia took it over and rebuilt it. So this is Kaliningrad. It is not connected to the mainland of Russia. You see, its neighbors are Lithuania and Poland. And to reach Russia, you have to go by sea through the Baltic Sea and reach St. Petersburg, or you have to go by air. So that is Kaliningrad, and there have been demands from Poland and other countries that Kaliningrad needs to be demilitarized. Russia should not be allowed to keep any weapons or armed forces there, that sort of thing. And obviously Russia will resist that. So Kaliningrad could come under some kind of pressure from the West, but Russia is powerful enough to withstand that pressure. So politically, diplomatically, etc., there's going to be talk of Kaliningrad. It may increase in the coming years, and nations like Poland and various EU and NATO nations, allies or assets of the US, may exhort NATO perhaps or the US to take some actions to demilitarize Kaliningrad or something, or pressure Russia to do that. So Kaliningrad is going to be in the news, but I expect that Russia is significantly powerful enough to resist any pressure to change the status quo in Kaliningrad. So I think the next 5-6 years, most likely the place will remain stable and there will be no major issues there. That's how I see it. So all the best for your studies. Do well. All right. Okay. SRR. Well, thank you very much. You haven't asked a question, but thank you so much. Ashish Karan says, Prime Minister Modi said we need to be technologically sovereign and asked our tech companies to innovate. Why didn't we do this beforehand? Why do we always play catch up? Well, you see, we have been playing catch up since 1947. In 1947, when the transfer of power happened from the British to people in India, India was a destroyed economy, utterly destroyed. And we have slowly been rising from that. We could have risen much faster if we had taken certain steps in the 20th century, whatever. So what Mr. Modi inherited was an economy that was not doing very well, and things have changed overall. And there are so many problems in India. One of the major problems is this lack of self-confidence. The infamous Indian inferiority complex. Indians feel that Westerners, people with whiter skin, are superior. The moment you're in Indian person is in the presence of a foreigner, their whole attitude, approach, behavior changes. Yes, sir, you are better, we are inferior, that sort of thing. That needs to go away. And this is one of the reasons why we have not innovated. Another reason for not innovating is because of alleged corruption and whatnot. So many issues. Whatever it is, it's water down the bridge. We did not do it. Very unfortunate, but now we should do it. No, we should do it. And eventually there'll come a time in our country where we are no longer playing catch up, when others will have to start playing catch up with us. For example, when it comes to missiles, we have the most frightening missiles in the world. We are the best missile producing nation in the world today. Okay, When it comes to air defense systems like the Akash, we have the best battle tested air defense system in the world. There are nations who are playing catch up with us on these fronts. We have to extend and expand this umbrella to everything else. So we are already in some cases at the forefront of technology, and that needs to move to other fields. So eventually there will come a time, if we get our things right, where we will not be the ones playing catch up. The rest of the world will be playing catch up. So that's the challenge. The government of India needs to create the right conditions for this to happen as quickly as possible, and that's the challenge that Mr. Modi is faced with. And I wish him the best, because we would like this to happen. Bhaskar Praveen says, big fan. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Did you predict the BRICS currency will dominate the USD in the next? Do you predict the BRICS currency will dominate the US dollar in the next 10 years? If so, how can that impact our stocks? Well, there's no BRICS currency right now. And in the past, there has been some talk of BRICS currency, but India said no. But now things are different. So will we, India, assent to the creation of BRICS currency? If that happens, that will be a huge challenge to the US, and Trump will be super upset with that, and he will impose sanctions on everybody. So if we are in that stage where the relationship between India and the US has gone that far downhill, then we may agree to a BRICS currency being created, and that could be a significant challenge to the US dollar in 10 years, possibly. I am not an expert on the stock market, so I have no idea how it will impact stocks. But if the India-US relationship goes significantly downhill, then I expect the creation of a BRICS currency. And that BRICS currency could in 10 years be a genuine challenger to the US dollar. So let's see how that goes. Animesh Paul says, did the US ever try to vassalize China, or did they try and fail? Can India learn anything from China along these lines? Love you, great. Thank you so much. Thank you. The US had this great dream of vassalizing China. You see, the US used Pakistan in the 20th century as an intermediary to start the channel, the communication channel with Pakistan, with China. So they used Pakistan as the intermediary. And Nixon and Kissinger communicated to Mao Zedong that, we would like to have a dialogue. And then eventually Kissinger and Nixon reached China, Beijing. They met with Mr. Mao, they met with Mr. Zhou Enlai, and so on. And this happened because the US saved China from being nuked by Russia in 1969. The Ussuri River clashes when USSR had decided to nuke China, but the US came in the way. So that led to eventually this détente between the US and China. And China decided, and the agreement that the two nations reached was that China would gradually open up its economy to the US. And China would start manufacturing products for the US slowly, gradually. That's what happened. And it continued during the time of Deng Xiaoping. And after by the time Deng Xiaoping died, the change was very significant. So the US hope was that, if we integrate China into the world's economy, and if we make China more prosperous than what it is, at that time China was third world nation. So if we achieve this change in China, then that will transform China, and China will become a liberal democracy, and hopefully a vassal of the US. That sort of thing. That was the great dream, hope, ambition, complete failure. So the objective was to kind of vassalize China. Did not work, right? BU says, Machiavelli versus Chanakya. Who's greatest and more relevant? Look, Machiavelli wrote a book about how a prince, a ruler, can retain power, essentially, through amoral means. Chanakya wrote a book on how to run an empire. There's no comparison between Machiavelli and Chanakya. How to govern an empire, the economy, the taxation, the administration, the espionage, the foreign policy, geopolitics, all of that, everything you can imagine. How the emperor should comport himself, what his daily routine should be like, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's so super detailed. Machiavelli is nothing compared to Chanakya is the greatest, no question. Raj Lalit says, if India becomes a dictatorship, what would be the global impact? While if India becomes a dictatorship and it is run efficiently, it will have a gigantic global impact. India will start behaving like a whole different beast. Um, Decisions will be taken very fast and implemented very fast. And things that usually took a long time to do would be done very fast, very rapidly. And if India becomes a dictatorship, it means India becomes an empire, an imperial kind of system, which would be something like what we always had. So the impact would be massive globally. India would rise very rapidly as long as the ruler is benevolent and is competent. Vishal Roar says, is Brazil semi-sovereign? Well, you see, if you are a nation that is in South America, you aren't fully sovereign. You are under the control of the US in so many ways. But Brazil is showing signs of sovereignty because Trump is upset with Brazil and has imposed 50% tariffs, which shows that Brazil is standing up for itself, at least to some extent. So you could say Brazil is semi-sovereign. If you look at the history, if you look at the Monroe Doctrine and so much more, then you will see that no nation in South America is completely sovereign. Ayers Manticore said, we had ancient protein fiber heavy millets and essential tubers as part of our diet, along with wheat and rice. Should we research this to try nutrition based genetic healing for our future generations? I think we should definitely explore cereals beyond right and wheat. What am I saying? What is right and wheat? Right and wheat, rice and wheat. So there was something called the Green Revolution or something in India in the 1900s, in the 20th century. And India was a nation that was beset with famines because of misgovernance and so on. So the Green Revolution kind of helped India. But what the consequences was that the nation became dependent on just a few strains or breeds of rice and wheat as the primary staple cereal. Now, we historically had, like you rightly say, we had various kinds of millets, jowar, bajra, and so many different varieties of these. These were part of our staple diet, and that gave us so much variety in our diet. And those are actually, I would say, better for your health and for your digestion, etc., compared to just plain old wheat and rice. And they also taste good. So we certainly should bring that back into the mainstream. Right now, most people just eat wheat, which is rotis, and rice, which is rice, boiled rice mostly, right? But you can have all these other fibers which were part of our traditional diet, and that would be really good for our health. Would that bring about genetic healing? See, one of the problems that Indian people face, a lot of the Indian population faces, is that it is genetically more predisposed towards becoming diabetic because of the 2.5 centuries of famines imposed by the British on our ancestors. So I think with good nutrition for multiple generations, we can weed that out. I'm sure it can be done. So yeah, we should certainly research our traditional cereals with the objective of, in the long run, weeding out these genetic defects. Yash says, after July 2024, deep state changed strategy, made Trump part of deep state, of course. September 24, World Liberty Financial created. Foolish to think that Trump won all swings without blessing. Like I said, first of all, I agree with you. And I had said at the time, I had said that Trump most likely won't win the presidency. That's what I had said. And I also said that if Trump does win the presidency, it means that he has kissed the ring. The kissing the ring is an allegory to mafia movies, like The Godfather. In The Godfather, for example, if you to swear your allegiance to the mafia boss, you have to go down on your knees and you have to kiss the ring that he's wearing on his whatever finger. That's called kissing the ring, which means you're swearing your allegiance to the big boss. So I said that if Trump does win, it means that he would have kissed the ring of the deep state, and that's exactly what's happening. In World Liberty Financial, of course, all of that. If you watch my geostrategy episodes, I've gone into great detail about Trump's personal business empire and its dealings with Pakistan and other countries. Ayers Manticore says, why are the American food products causing a rise in IQ decline and mental disorders in kids? Why are there people not doing anything about it at all? You see, at some point in time, the US economy became a completely exploitative economy. The pharmaceutical industry became an exploitative industry. The food industry became exploitative. They wanted to hook their consumers onto the products. They wanted to maximize their revenue with by whatever means possible, which have the effect that all kinds of processed foodstuffs and processed chemicals and whatnot became part of the food chain. And if you look at a video of how, for example, Doritos are manufactured, you will see the kind of chemicals and other stuff that goes into it. And all of this obviously is not natural. It's going to cause a decline in IQ, an increase in mental disorders, increase in obesity, increase in cancer, increase in God knows what things. The food industry exploits the people of America, and they are hand in glove with the politicians. Super corrupt. So that's what's happening. You see? Why are the people not doing anything at all? Because it is not really a democracy. Otherwise, something would be done. You see? You can see the signs and symptoms of this not being a true democracy. It's just masquerading as a democracy. P. Cole says, why is India arming Armenia? Even when our ally... excuse me, what? Ally? Let us not use terms that casually. Even when our ally Israel supports Azerbaijan, what are my thoughts on this? First of all, Israel is not our ally. India has no allies. What do we mean by ally? Do you know what the term ally means? A nation is an ally if you have a treaty with it, a treaty that explicitly lays out the rules of the alliance, the terms of the alliance, and both nations must sign that treaty. That's when you have an alliance, and that's when you are an ally. Both nations are allies. We have no allies. Please understand this, my dear Indians. This is another example. Somebody asked me that why are Indians, what do you mean by Indians are naive when it comes to geopolitics? Well, this is one example. I am not meaning to criticize you, okay? But this is an example of that. I'm not criticizing you. This is not your fault. We are not taught these things in the education system. So it's not the fault of our Indian people if they are naive geopolitically. But that's why I am doing what I'm doing. So please understand. What does it mean to be an ally? It means you have a treaty alliance. You have a treaty with which both countries have signed. And we have no such treaty with anybody. So Israel is not our ally. We have good relations with Israel. We have a lot of convergence of interest with Israel. But we have differences with Israel as well. And I'll not go into those right now. So this is one example. India is arming Armenia. Israel is supporting Azerbaijan. Why are we arming Armenia? Because we don't want this ancient nation with whom, first of all, we have a very ancient relationship. We don't want this nation to be wiped out from the map of the world. Secondly, if Armenia is wiped out, it strengthens Turkey greatly. And Turkey is an ally of Pakistan. Not ally, a friend of Pakistan. Okay? And that will strengthen Pakistan. And that will hamper our friends in Persia, in Iran. It's complicated. Okay, so why is Israel supporting Azerbaijan? Because they want to use that to influence the Azeri population in Iran, to hopefully, from their perspective, conduct a regime change operation in Iran. It's pretty complicated. So that's the deal. So you see, India and Israel are on opposing sides in this matter. Are allies generally on opposing sides? No, they're not. Okay. This clear weaponization of laws and commie feminism to destroy marriage and family system in India. How do we save ourselves from this attack? Lack of purushatva masculinity makes us sitting ducks, etc. Look, this is not really a geopolitics question, but look, you are right. There is all this happening, and how do we save ourselves from this attack? We have to reform the education system. If we teach the right things to our kids from the very beginning through the education system, nothing like this will work. Nothing like this will work. All this weaponization of all this nonsense, it won't work if our people are properly educated. You understand? You have to teach the right things from the very beginning, from the time a kid is 3 years old, all the way to the time they're in college. If you take care of the education properly, nobody can influence them, nobody can brainwash them. Our education system is so weak, and itself is the problem. And that's why we have these issues in India. Your own teachers and professors eventually teach you all the wrong things. They influence you in the wrong direction. That's the problem. And because you are impressionable kids, you'll believe them. That's what needs to change, people. That's why I keep saying education needs to be reformed. Right. Okay, we're gonna end this soon. Aries Manticore says the U.S. education system is being exported to the world. It has been optimized to demonize their own young men. That's right. So, on a record scale, the school college dropout rate of young US men is becoming higher and higher. That's true. That's what you can do. The education system is so powerful. In any country, the education system can completely change outcomes for the country. Completely. It won't happen overnight. It will take 20 years, 30 years, but eventually you can completely transform the whole nature of a country through the education system. So the US is a nation that's misandric today. Men are second class citizens in the US. That's what's being done to the US, actually, in the US. They demonize men, no question about it. Um, so young men are disenchanted, and they're dropping out and so on. And they're trying to export this stuff to India, which is a geopolitical ploy once again. You see, Sagar, thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. Sagar once again says, how to deal with rising hate versus Indians in Canada, US, Ireland, in East Asia, where many worship the Buddha but wrongly believe it was Chinese, not Indian. Okay, let's talk about, first of all, the West. Canada, US, Ireland, these nations. Look, there's a wave of propaganda against Indians on social media. They demonize Indians, and this is being done. This is not all accidental. It's not spontaneous. It's being done by design to change the way Indians are viewed globally. See, you know what Pakistanis do when they go to Western countries? They form grooming gangs, rape gangs, and they do all kinds of horrific crimes. Indians never do crimes. But you will not see any such hatred being spewed against Pakistanis on social media, while Indians are consistently demonized. And this is being done on, it's not random, it's not spontaneous. This is all organized. It's all well thought out. So this is the situation, and because of that, you're seeing rising incidents of attacks or assaults or various hate crimes against Indians in the West, whether it's North America, whether it's Ireland, or wherever. How to deal with this? I have no idea. You got to be careful. If you are an Indian origin person living there, you've got to be more careful. That's what I would say, because this is going to increase. It's getting worse. The US administration, the Trump regime, is now talking about the H-1B visas, how Indians with H-1B visas are stealing American jobs and all. So once again, you can see more demonization coming from the very top. Indians will have to be very careful. If you are a brown-skinned person, look like an Indian person, you've got to be careful. You will have to take precautions that others don't have to take. Yeah. In East Asia, I don't think there's that sort of hatred towards Indians, that sort of thing. Yeah, many people in East Asia, especially those who aren't educated, believe Buddha was Chinese, because the Chinese government has portrayed Buddhism as a Chinese religion, because they've had Buddhism for the past 2000 years, right? At least. So what can we do about this? Well, I would say that the government of India needs to take steps to teach the world, to remind the world that Buddhism originated in India. It's an Indian religion. It's one of the dharmic religions. And it is one of the facets, one of the religions that are part of the dharmic umbrella. And it's not just the government of India that needs to do this. Us Indians need to educate the world wherever possible. So that's what needs to happen. And another thing that does contribute to a negative perception of Indians is the way Indians behave when they go abroad as tourists. That needs to change. I mean, the people of Bali, allegedly, I hear, are tired of Indians because of the way Indians behave there. I mean, the Balinese should be the first people to like Indians, because we are the nation where Hinduism came from, and the Balinese people are Hindus. But apparently, even they are tired of Indians and their behavior. So Indians, when they visit other countries, need to learn how to behave in a civilized manner. Just because you've got some money doesn't mean that you can now go and flaunt it and behave like absolute boors abroad. -2K, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Arun says DJT is behaving like a vendor who got haggled by an Indian mom for 30 minutes and didn't sell anything. Indian envoy may have used their experience from roadside shops here. I don't know what you mean by that, but he is frustrated. Trump is definitely frustrated. The Indian diplomats clearly have negotiated very hard. They clearly are very tough negotiators. And that seems to have really upset Trump, because he was expecting that India will cave in and India will give him exactly what he wants. And he hasn't got anything of what he wanted, which was the vassalhood of India. He hasn't got what he wanted. And that's why he's upset. So, yeah, India is standing up for itself. Hyphen 2K says, I'm a truck driver in the UK, originally from India. Okay. And all I do is listen to Ask Abhijit all day long, and it has changed the way I think. Wow. I'm astonished. First of all, well, thank you so much for spending your valuable time listening to me. Thank you so much. And I'm happy it has changed possibly the way you think. Thank you so much. And yeah, so you're in the UK, you're a truck driver from India. Well, thank you so much for your contribution and for saying for communicating this to me and to everybody else. And what can I say? I'm very touched. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best, sir. Do very well in whatever you're doing in life. All the best, and I look forward to hearing from you again in the future. All the best, sir. All the best. Do well. Ranj Singh says, how does the US do regime change? Why can't India do it? That is a whole big story. How do you effect a regime change operation? Well, I would say, look, I cannot tell you the mechanics and dynamics of regime change because it's a very long thing to explain. But I would say I'll give you some homework. Okay? Look up how the Euromaidan revolution happened. 2014 in Kiev. The Euromaidan coup that was executed by the US. How was it executed? Look it up. Just look at the chronology. Ask your favorite Google or ChatGPT or whatever. Give me a chronological outline of the events that preceded the Euromaidan coup or revolution, the events that happened during the coup, the revolution, and the aftermath of that. Give me a chronological outline and explain the involvement of US government officials in that. Then you will have a chronological outline of what things happen in what sequence and what order. That's one example of a coup that the US carried out. Another example is the regime change operation in Dhaka, which happened more recently, last year, which I had predicted 9 months before that. That sort of thing. Yeah, so that's what you can do. But they have a whole, they have this playbook now. They have got it down to a formula, the color revolution formula. And that's how they do it. They've done so many such color revolutions. Kapai developer says, excited to tune into your latest adventures. Thank you so much. And I look forward to having you on board. Thank you, sir. User 6362 says, did Trump solve Armenia-Azerbaijan issue? Yeah, well, yes, it looks like he has, at least for now, solved the Azerbaijan-Armenia issue. He has brokered a peace agreement between the two nations. I think it was the first question I took today. He has brokered a peace agreement between the two nations. Both nations will immediately cease all hostilities. They will establish diplomatic relations and trade relations. And a Trump corridor will be created in the southern part of Armenia, bordering Iran, where the US will have exclusive rights to minerals, and they will build rail corridor and whatnot. So the US will get access to some resources there. So that's how he has solved it. Let's see how long it remains solved. Let's see. Achintya Anand says, what are the Indian national interests in the gist? Well, to give you a very simple one-sentence answer, the Indian national interest is the long-term security, prosperity, stability of the Indian nation and the Indian civilization. So the duty of the ruler is to ensure the long-term stability, security, and prosperity of the people and the nation and the civilization. This includes national integrity, territorial integrity, civilizational and cultural and religious integrity also, and so much more. Okay, that's like I can give you in a very brief answer. Kapai developer says, how can India ensure that the Baloch situation doesn't blow up in our faces like the LTTE in the 1980s? Well, how do we ensure that? We ensure it by not doing what we did badly in the 1980s. In the 1980s, we sent the IPKF to Sri Lanka, the Indian Peacekeeping Force to Sri Lanka, which was professional soldiers, but we did not give them a proper mission. See, what does the Indian Army do? What does it specialize in? It specializes in executing missions. What's a mission? That's your target. You go there, you get in, get something done, and get out in this much time frame. That's a mission. You need to have clear objectives. You need to have clear targets. You need to have deadlines. You need to have territorial targets and whatnot. Clear, delineated missions. That's what you need to have. What happened for the IPKF is that they were told, you go and be there. Jao, baith jao. Be there. Be there. That's it. They had no idea what to do. They had no clear objectives. The Indian armed forces were treated like a police force. And that messed up things so badly. So you have to learn the lessons of the IPKF debacle and not do the same thing in Balochistan. So when it comes to Balochistan, we don't have any armed forces there. So first of all, there itself is the solution, right? How will it blow up in our faces? How will it? And so on. So that's how you do it. So how do you ensure something doesn't go wrong? By first studying what went wrong the last time and doing exactly ensuring that you don't do any of the things you did at that time. That's how we do it. MK says, what repercussions or actions might the US take if India purchases the Sukhoi 57 or the S-500? I suppose they would impose some kind of sanctions on India. More tariffs or maybe some form of sanctions. That's what could happen. Right? Yeah. Shiva Prasad says, why are geopolitical strategist videos not getting focused just like yours and Ankit Shah's right now? I have no idea. Look, we have to understand that this platform that we are using right now, it is not an Indian platform. It's a foreign platform. It's an American platform. We have to acknowledge that fact. We have to respect that fact. We have to respect the fact that this platform gets to set the rules of the game. We don't get to set the rules of the game. They get to set the rules of the game. And they will obviously not like people who educate the world about things that are detrimental to their national interest. Right? That sort of thing. Now, they are treating India as kind of an adversarial nation, a nation that needs to be contained. And if Indian geopolitical strategists or analysts or whatever are educating Indians about these things, well, they will not like it. So they may suppress those channels, suppress the views and subscribers and whatnot. That sort of thing can happen. And I would say that it's their platform. They have the right to do it. You understand that? So that's the reason why I have decided to pull the geostrategy series out. I'm not doing it anymore on YouTube. I respect that this is their platform and they have the right to do whatever they want. And if I say things that are not in line with their national interest, they will not like it. So that's how it goes. So if we don't want to be in the situation, we need to have our own platforms, right? That's how it goes. Technological sovereignty. Arun says, how different is Bali Hinduism? Why is it different? I'll tell you what, sir. You go to different parts of India, Hinduism is different. You go to Kashmir Shaivism is super different from Shaivism, the worship of Lord Shiva in Tamil Nadu. Gujarat is where you had Lord Krishna's kingdom, Dwarka. Lots of Gujarati people are Vaishnav. If you go to Assam or Manipur, the Vaishnavism there is very different from what you have in Gujarat. Do you understand? I think I've answered your question right here. Now, if you go further ahead, if you go to Indonesia used to be a Hindu nation, Hindu empire, the Majapahit empire. Their version of Hinduism was their own version of Hinduism. Like any different geography, you will have different ways of practicing the culture, the civilization, the religion. So that's how it was, right? It's pretty different. They have their own ways of worshipping our gods, the same gods as us, but in a very different way, different shape and form. And that's the beauty of Hinduism. It is so diverse. It is so democratic, right? Ritik says, my views on Maharashtra CM driving Tesla. I am not aware of that and I don't really have any views on that. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Ankita says, in India, corruption is not looked down upon, unfortunately. Instead, people boast of their out of proportion income or assets. Protocol money, just a statement. I'll tell you that. Why is it so? Allegedly. You have to use the word allegedly. Um, there is no action that's taken, unfortunately, against corruption. When someone is caught with, you know, assets that obviously were allegedly obtained through illicit means, let's say hypothetical case, I'm not aware of any, I may be aware, but hypothetical case, some IAS officer is caught with 50 crore rupees. Hypothetical scenario. Clearly that their income can't support that sort of money. So where did it come from? Obviously, allegedly corruption. What happens? Suspension. Not termination of employment, suspension. And after some days, quietly they come back into service and they are posted somewhere else. Well, they will start the same thing again. So that's how the system is allegedly run. The entire system, bottom to who knows how far up, right? The whole country allegedly runs on corruption. So when this is the system that runs the country and there is no action taken against that, then people will boast about it, obviously, right? The moment the government starts taking action against this, well, things will change. Akash says, big fan, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. How might the AI arms race shape future alliances and conflicts, given current US and Chinese advancements? Does India stand anywhere? See, right now, India doesn't stand anywhere, okay? India doesn't have its own AI systems, LLMs, or whatever, as far as I know. As far as I know. But India could develop something in the next 2 months also. It's not that hard to do it. But right now we don't really figure or stand anywhere. How might the AI arms race shape future alliances and conflicts? It's going to be a couple of 2-3 countries that will lead the world in AI, and they will make their AI services and products available to everybody else at a price, and not the full technology, of course, but export versions, let's say. And let's say you have the US, so they will make their LLM services available, LLM and other services available, image generation, video generation, whatever services available at various different price points to the world, and they will compete with other nations like China. The Chinese also have some products like, what is it, DeepSeek R1, R2, and what else? They have something called Manus and some other things as well. The French have Mistral. So everybody will compete to make money. So it will shape the world in that sort of sense. Alliances, well, in an alliance, whichever nation is the most advanced in AI is going to rule the alliance. So when it comes to NATO or the EU, it's going to be the US that obviously is in the lead, and nobody is even close to the US. So they will continue to dominate the alliances. See, in an alliance, the most powerful nation dominates everything and gets to set the agenda and the rules. So those alliances will be dominated by the nation with the most powerful AI systems, because then they can do whatever they want. So when it comes to EU and the EU and NATO, the US will dominate, because they are not just militarily most powerful, economically most powerful, but also technologically most powerful, and they are the nation that is at the forefront of AI. When it comes to, let's say, any alliance that involves China, well, China will lead that alliance. BRICS is not an alliance. BRICS is just a coalition of nations, an economic coalition. So yeah, that's how it's going to go. But eventually it's going to be a couple, maybe 2 or 3 nations that will lead the world and rule the world, because their AI advancements will go so far ahead that nobody can catch up eventually. Yash says, so-called democracy is so manipulable. China and Russia knows this and resisted themselves from Western puppets. Only way for India to get out of the mess is not being a democratic nation. Well, we are very far from not becoming democratic. We are very far from that. But yeah, you're right. Aradhya Pandit says, is Trump a Russian asset? His actions justify it. Who knows? Who knows? You never know. You never know. Premier League says, hello again, SAR. If the US has a deep state, do one-party states like China, UAE, Saudi Arabia also have their own deep states? Not really. Not really. The US is special. It has a deep state, which and the facade of democracy hides who really is wielding the levers of power. That's what the Anglo-Saxons have done in the past couple of centuries. They have very cleverly hidden their means of power. That's what they've done. So the US does have a deep state. I think that's very clear to everybody. One party states like China doesn't have a deep state. Its power it lies in the Politburo and top leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. As clear as that. There's nobody hidden behind some curtain somewhere. Um, Saudi Arabia, the royal family is the power. There's nobody hidden behind them. Of course, the bigger power is the US, and that they have to acknowledge. But overall, in Saudi Arabia itself, it's the royal family that is the power. And currently, it's the crown prince, Mr. Mohammed bin Salman, who is the most powerful person. So they don't have the deep states. It's the US that has a deep state. Okay, we'll take a couple more questions. Adit Kumar says, can India sign a Sukhoi 57 deal while Putin visits India? And my second question, did we kill 2 Turkish drone pilots during Operation Sindoor? I think there's a possibility that India may sign a deal for a certain number of Sukhoi 57 fighter planes when Mr. Putin visits India. It's a possibility. I'm not guaranteeing it will happen, but it's a possibility that exists. So yes, it can happen. Secondly, did we kill 2 Turkish drone pilots during Operation Sindoor? It is possible. I am also hearing some chatter about that. Is it confirmed? No. Is it possible? Oh, it's very highly likely. It's likely. That's all I can say. Arun says, about Bali Hinduism, I heard that they were forced to be monotheistic and they chose Brahma to represent the god. Can't find the truth online. Wiki has just 2 lines. Okay, I'm not sure about that. See, Indonesia has been an Islamic country for quite some time, right? And Bali has remained Hindu. It's possible they may have come under some kind of pressure to portray themselves as a little more monotheistic as such, which is something Hindus can do. See, we Hindus can believe in 100 different deities and gods, but we can also say that all these different gods and deities are the representation of one great deity, that sort of thing. So Hinduism is a very flexible religion that way. We can believe in a supreme deity. We can believe in lots of different deities. Historically, our religion has evolved so much. We used to have one great god earlier, Dios Pitru, the great sky father, whose consort was Prithvi Mata. We just had 2 major gods back in the day, even before the Rigvedic age. Then things changed, and it's evolved so much over the thousands of years, or the millennia. So I'm not sure about this, but it's possible. I think it kind of makes sense that in a monotheistic country you may face some pressure of this kind. Okay, that brings me to the end of today's questions. I'm going to end it here. Okay, one last question I will take from Aradhya Pandit. I am a CA student, 18 years old. Advice. Okay, what advice can I give you? You are 18 years old. Your life is just starting. Okay. My advice is work as hard as possible. Don't work over hard. Work smart, and learn real skills. The education system is going to be something you will need to go through because you need degrees and all. But the real skills you need to learn are the skills that really matter in the real world, which is interpersonal skills. You need to know how to deal with people. You need to know how to learn new skills as soon as required. You need to be able to solve problems in whichever field you are. So these are the things, the real world skills. That's what you need to focus on. All right, sir. All the best. Okay, I'm going to end it over here. Thank you so much for all the questions. We have way overshot past 2 hours, but I enjoyed this. Thank you so much for the questions, and I'll end it here. Keep asking questions, keep learning, keep raising your standards, and I look forward to seeing you in my next live stream. Thank you, everybody. Take care. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.